What's up? What's happening? What's up? Check, check. Check, check. 1, 2, 3. What's up? What's happening? On a Monday, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live if you like to catch us on YouTube as well at the Team 980. Shout out to Metal Chris on the ones and twos today. Anthony out sick. And if you're listening, feel better. Also, go take a nap. Just kidding. You have your medicine now. So hopefully Anthony will be back tomorrow. Feeling a lot better. Get your flu shots, kids. Stuff's going around. We need everybody reporting for duty. We need all hands on deck. And what you need right now to get started here on a Monday, a Tell the Truth Monday, is a breakdown of the old Commanders-Ravens game. And that's what we got for you, 1st and 10 style.
It's time to get the breakdown started. 1, 2, 3. First up, 10 observations.
Mr. Ginsai and just boom, put it right on the ground.
It's 1st and 10.
Number one, the largest takeaway from that game is that this 30-23 loss for the Commanders. A good performance by a good team that got beat by a very good performance by an excellent team. The Baltimore Ravens are really good. More on that later. But when soup to nuts, when push comes to shove, whatever the analogy is, the game comes down to a few key plays, specifically third downs on defense for Washington, where their better receivers, as in Zay Flowers, beat Washington's average in Benjamin St-Juste's case, or emerging corners like Mike Sainristil. And that also is enhanced by the fact on two of those key, and I'm talking very key third downs. One is the play before a touchdown, and the other is when they needed to stop late. They come on PIs on St-Juste that are bad calls. The one in the red zone, not a good call. I understand why they called it if the ref has a bad angle, but realistically, that wasn't enough for a PI. And the second one where the dude just falls down, it's like, yeah, St-Juste's hands were on him as he went down because he was tripping over his own feet, falling into St-Juste's knees. It's not Benjamin's job to get out of the way when the dude trips over the ground. Like, it's a ridiculous call. And so, ultimately, if you're telling me that's the difference in the game is a couple of key stops, some of which Washington obviously needs to play better at, but also Baltimore puts you in really tough spots. They put you in tough spots with how much grass you have to defend because of Lamar's ability to run, Lamar's ability to throw to all areas of the field, Derrick Henry, some of the very specific things that they, and I'm talking only they can do, like some of the runs that they get you in a condensed formation. Everyone's super tight to the line of scrimmage. It feels like there's, 20 guys in between the numbers. And then they run to the edge, and it's a foot race. And even if you get there at the same time they do, one dude you're trying to bring down is Derrick Henry, and the other guy that you're racing is Patrick Ricard, a 300-pound fullback who runs, faster than the linebackers, faster, like a DB. Like, he's out there, and he's killing people, so they can get to the edge without having anybody out there to block when they say set hut. Like, the kind of stuff that they can do in the run game is literally only Baltimore can do that. And it's because of Lamar. It's because of Ricard. Daniel Falalele is a 6'8", 380-pound right guard. And there are some one-on-one blocks that he's able to stick because he's 6'8", 380 that there ain't a lot of guards in the league that can do. It just allows you to do certain stuff. Like, there is a play where Fedarian Mathis, Big Phil, 350 pounds, like, he does a good job to stand Falalele up, but he can't get anywhere. The dude he's trying to get around has got an angle on him, and he's 6'8", 680. Or, sorry, 6'8", 680 would be a big, that's a big dude. 6'8", 380. Like, sometimes you get beat by better dudes, and Baltimore's got better dudes. And if I had told you that they were going to be competitive, in this game in the middle of June, I think people would be pretty psyched about it. And realistically, they were competitive. They needed to stop at the end. They couldn't get it. The Commanders certainly did not play perfectly. They are not above reproach. We're going to get into a lot more detail over the next couple of days on things they could have done better, certain coverage decisions. I think Joe Witt's got some stuff he's going to want back. Cliff, Jaden, receivers, running backs, O-line, D-line, everybody. But over the course of that game, there wasn't a lot of separation between those two teams, as evidenced by the fact that it ultimately was a 30-23 one-score game. Sorry, that one score was 7 instead of 6 or 3. If perhaps you were invested in this one more than emotionally, that 6.5 line, that one hurt. But They legitimately competed with the Baltimore Ravens, and the difference at the end of the day was talent. They weren't going to fix that going into Sunday, but they will learn from it and fix it more so going forward. And I think that is genuinely exciting. So, biggest takeaway, they lost to a better team, and they competed with them. That ain't bad.
Number 2.
And the reason that ain't bad, and the reason that's actually really encouraging, is because the reason why they were able to do that, and that is their quarterback. If Jaden Daniels is playing, the Washington Commanders have a chance to win. It does not matter the team that they are playing against. You haven't been able to say that about any quarterback with this franchise forever. Like, maybe since Sonny was playing, with all due respect to, like, Theismann and Rippon and Doug and, Kirk, Robert, at the best that they were playing. Like, so much of the success that this team has had in its franchise history, including its Super Bowls, was they had a tremendous roster depth all around. And it's just, there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot right with that. 3 Super Bowl trophies, to be in fact. But like the Hogs, some of the guys they had on defense, obviously, D Green's number going up into the rafters this weekend. He was around for all of that. So like, there's just so many great players in this franchise's history, and so few of them, for sustained success purposes, are quarterbacks. And I guess Robert in 2012, for sure, there was a part of that, but also like Alfred Morris and that O-line were great. That defense was hitting people with, Fletch in the middle and some of the guys they had spread throughout. Obviously, Kirk had an unbelievable run at the end of 2015 on the way to the division title, but never have they had a guy like this. And at least, certainly since I've been covering the team, and I would say going all the way back, I don't know enough about what this team looked like in Sonny's era, but I know Sonny's in the Hall of Fame, so I'm gonna say probably Sonny counts. But like anytime you're talking about Washington quarterbacks and you say, well, it's the first time since Sonny Jurgensen, you get the freaking point. Yesterday was yet another step in his growth because of the things he didn't have going for him and the way he was able to overcome them. On 11 called runs yesterday by their running backs, 2 were successful. Success defined by success rate, the NFL stat that I don't know whether it's their stat or whoever keeps it, but you got to get 5 yards on first down, half the distance on second down. So if it's 2nd and 8, you have to get at least 4. Third down, whatever you need to get the first down. Those are considered successful plays. On 2 of 11 runs, they were successful. And by success rate, Jaden Daniels was 50% on his dropbacks. So they have no running game. He himself is not successful yesterday as a runner, and he still is over 50% success rate, getting the job done on what he needs to do on over 50% of his snaps against a defense that was really good. And by the way, that 50% includes quote-unquote unsuccessful dropbacks, such as some checkdowns that were against free blitzers, and Baltimore makes good tackles in space, but it's the right decision. He did what he needed to do. There is the dirt ball to Austin Eckler, which is 100% the correct decision in the 2-minute. That's on the unsuccessful side of things because that's how the stat works, but he still was able to, that is the correct play. That is going to grade out way better than 50%. He has that 50% success rate, including some monster plays to Terry McLaurin, even though Terry has only 1.6 average yards of separation, according to Next Gen Stats. He was like, it's Terry. I know I'm supposed to throw here. I'm going to do it anyway. And Terry made a whole bunch of plays. It included throws at all 3 levels of the defense. No huge deep shots, 50-yard bombs yesterday, but he had 1 or 2 deeper to stretch the defense a little bit. He had 1 bigger completion. He was over the middle of the field more yesterday, 7 of 9 over the middle of the field, according to Next Gen Stats. So there's just continued growth from him as a passer, and as teams ask him to do different stuff. And not every team, by the way, is going to be able to do what Baltimore did to them in terms of shutting down the run, having the speed and the players and the know-how to shut Jaden down as a runner, the discipline to lock him in terms of the rush lanes from escaping as a scrambler. Like, not everybody can do that. In fact, most teams are not going to be able to do that. And he still found ways to be good. He still found ways to get them competitive. And ask yourself this question. If they had been able to get a stop at the end of that game, and Jaden gets the ball back, do you think that game goes to overtime? Whether it does or not is kind of irrelevant. The fact that you just went, yes, I do, because I believe in that guy's ability to make plays that much, is the point. When was the last time you felt like that? I don't if you're a Washington football fan, some of you it's never, depending on how old you are. Simply put, Jaden Daniels is a top 10 NFL quarterback right now, based off of everything that he's done this season and the trajectory that he's on. Again, will it be smooth always? Has he figured the NFL out to the point that he's never going to have a bad game in his entire career? Of course not. That would be ridiculous. However, top 10 quarterbacks have bad games, and I wouldn't take 10 dudes. I don't know, like if we're going futures contracts, I don't know I'm taking 5 dudes. I don't know how many dudes I'm taking over this guy right now. He is that good.
Number 3.
With that said, one of the dudes that I would take over him right now for this season, I don't know about moving forward, but certainly for this season, plays on the other side. Lamar Jackson is so freaking good that he is a 2-time MVP, widely considered one of the best in the league, and I think he might still be underrated. Part of that is he's had some bad games / rough moments in playoffs, and that matters. You know, when you go against Patrick Mahomes and he beats you, like everyone's like, that guy's, how good is he? It's like, well, Mahomes is on the potential GOAT track, so like not being as good as Patrick Mahomes doesn't mean that you're not awesome. Lamar not only is so gifted physically, and some of the throws he makes yesterday, from off-platform stuff to the way he leads his receivers, some of those Zay Flowers catches are because Lamar has perfect ball placement and he leads him. A lot of quarterbacks make that receiver slow down a little bit, and if he slows down like BSJ and Saint Still and Igbenogany, like they can make plays. It's because, you know, Lamar puts the ball out in front and Zay Flowers doesn't even have to slow down, so he's able to maintain the separation that he earned at the top of his route. There's so much of that stuff, but also I think one of the differences right now between Lamar and Jaden, and this gap is going to close tremendously because Jaden just doesn't have the file that Lamar has. Lamar got them in so many good plays. Logan talked about it on our Take Command postgame last night. Lamar's ability to check into the right play, especially considering some of the looks that they get routinely because of the way they line up and the formations. Like Todd Monken's really, really good at his job, Baltimore's OC. So many of their big plays were ones that he checked into. And that mental game, Jaden does it actually really well, like ridiculously well as a rookie. But to be able to do it snap in, snap out with the consistency Lamar does is just a different level. And especially when you're as good post-snap as he is. He is super duper special. And then he's surrounded by a bunch of other guys that are really good. Zay Flowers is an excellent player. Excellent player. Some of their linemen, you know, Ricard is such a weapon for them as a fullback. Obviously, Derrick Henry is just like a marvel of a running back in 2024. I don't think he's going to wind up being the last Hall of Fame running back, but he might be the last one for a while. Like, there'll be someone that emerges, but like, let's realize how rare Derrick Henry is as a weapon in the modern NFL game, and the fact that he is worth giving the ball to the way that they give it to him. So ultimately, like, Baltimore is really good. In fact, Baltimore is a great team, and they're playing really well. Their O-line has come together. And to say anything else about the Commanders, which, of course, we'll have 6 more bullet points coming up next about Washington. But to go any further talking about this game without the context of just how good Baltimore is to not give it to you straight. And I realize on Misery Monday after a loss, you might just want to hear everybody sucks and someone needs to get fired. That's not this show. This show is going to try to give you the reality of the context of what just happened. And the reality is the Washington Commanders lost to a team that has built up a tremendous side over the course of years, from an identity, a talent, and everything. And they played a really good game that not many teams in the league could compete with, which Washington did nevertheless beat yesterday. All right, quick break. We come back for the back half of our 1st and 10 next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. All right, let's pick up our 1st and 10. Roll through the last half of this, starting with
number 4.
I want to talk about Benjamin St. Juste, and I'm probably going to spend a little bit more time on this, and then we'll roll as quick as we can through the rest of it, and then we'll take your phone calls on a Tell the Truth Monday. But people are crushing Benjamin St. Juste today, and I think it's completely and utterly unfair because he did not have his best game. That is for sure. He did not play a perfect game. That is for sure. I don't even know that I would say he played a good game. I think he played an okay game. He was somewhat sticky in a lot of coverage situations. He got a couple of times. All of those times were he's playing man-to-man coverage in a ton of space, and Baltimore blocks a bunch of stuff up. He's got to cover for a long time. He's got to chase guys across the field with no help, but he gives up the right thing. Like, you can't cover everything. You can't play one-on-one in a full NFL field full of space against NFL wide receivers. Like, it's an impossible ask. And so when he's doing that stuff, he's able to stay close enough to make tackles. He's coming off of his guys and making physical tackles in other situations. He plays with a mentality and intent and a physicality that says, like, you can play for Dan Quinn. You can play for Adam Peters. And shoot, you can play for me any given day mentality-wise. The two biggest plays that he gives up are the pass interference penalties, and I don't think either of them are good calls. And I can't get on the radio and crush a guy for doing exactly what he's supposed to do. What is he like? He plays perfect coverage. I would say it's pretty perfect coverage. Maybe you could teach something. Maybe a referee would be like, no, you can't do that. But, like, there's no grab on the one in the red zone. The play before Henry walks it in for the touchdown. Like, it is. He's on one hip. He comes around and swipes across. The ball is nowhere to be found near Zay Flowers. Flowers doesn't make any extraordinary attempt to get it. He just looks around and hopes that, the fact that St. Juste jumped around him can get a flag. But there's no real pull. There's no real tug. There's no sustained anything. It's a bad call. Straight up, it's a bad call. I understand why the ref made it because that motion often comes with a hook, comes with a tug. But there wasn't one, and your job as a referee is to be right. And then on the second one, in the second half, like, the dude just falls down into BSJ's knees, and Benjamin puts his hands on him as he goes down so that the dude doesn't roll up and hyperextend into it, or roll into Benjamin's knee and hyperextend it. It's a human reaction to a dude who tripped over the ground and fell into your legs. That's not PI. And both of those are on third downs. It costs the Commanders double-digit points if they're just called correctly. And if those two are called correctly, a.k.a. no calls, none of y'all are mad at BSJ today. You're like, dang, he gave up a couple, but those are tough. Where's the pass rush? Why didn't he get home? Why is Benjamin St. Juste being asked to cover a guy like Zay Flowers? That is not his ideal matchup. The reality is, the problem is the corner who wasn't on the field yesterday. And I'm not going to sit here and crush Emmanuel Forbes because I'm not at practice. I don't know what's going on there. But, like, really, I would like, we can go back and crush Ron Rivera. I saw his name trending on Twitter today. I imagine this is why. You can't draft a dude to be your number one corner and have him a healthy scratch in year 2. Roster building does not work that way. And people say, oh, they should have been more aggressive because Forbes wasn't good last season. Why did they think they could get something out of him? They should have signed Stephon Gilmore. Takes two to tango. I don't know that Gilmore wanted to play here. I think a lot of the number one type corners are older that were available were older guys who wanted to go to contenders. And while the Commanders have turned into one, nobody thought they would be. And that seemed like a reasonable expectation in the offseason. Maybe if things go right, they'll be around 500. No, they're legit. And I'm sure some of those guys maybe wish they had signed here instead of wherever they wound up. But realistically, like, there wasn't a lot of options. You couldn't draft a number one corner in the draft because you used your number one overall pick on a quarterback, Jaden Daniels. That's turning out well. And when you have what you have right now with Washington, it is impossible not to have holes in your roster. And what I mean by that is when your last 1, 2, 3, 4 first-round picks are not contributing for you, you are going to be missing really important players at positions. And at edge, Chase Young and now Jamin Davis. Both guys, not helpful. There's 2. Wide receiver. They could use a really good wide receiver too. Well, Jahan Dotson. They shipped him off to Philly because he wasn't it. And all he's done is go to Philly and do a whole lot of nothing. And then corner. If you had a good corner, you'd be in a completely different place defensively, but Forbes has been a bust. That's not on this group, and there's just a reality that we're going to have to deal with when it comes to this, that Benjamin St-Juste deserves credit and applause for being willing to go out there and compete his ass off, knowing, sure, he doesn't go to bed every night being like, well, I'm a number 2 corner. Like, he's out there trying. It's not his fault. And he really didn't play that poorly yesterday. A lot of bad results happened with him involved, but I'm not blaming him for bad calls, and I'm not blaming him for pass rush not getting home and blitzes not getting home. And if he had then missed tackles on some of those crossers, okay, fine. He didn't. He made the play the best he could, and I understand the frustration. I would direct that frustration at Ron Rivera every time he shows up on your television, at Emmanuel Forbes if you really want to. If you want to, at Adam Peters, although I don't think that he really could have done anything. And whatever's left, if you want to direct it at St-Juste, fine. But I don't think it's BSJ's fault. That's my Benjamin St-Juste rant. Because I hate... It's also the inhumane vitriol and some of the things that people say that's just completely... If you don't like him as a football player, fine. Be like, dang, I'm tired of watching him. Okay, fine. Do that. Some of the language that gets used online, especially about a guy where it's not his fault, that bothers me on a human level, and it's unnecessary. All right.
Number 5.
The rest of the secondary, there were more busts in this game than we've seen probably the previous 3 combined. They had a couple of miscommunications. I think a huge part of that is there was a ton of space on the second level because Baltimore's play-action game is so good. Suck the linebackers up. There's a ton of space. Guys are confused as to where they need to be. There was miscommunication in the red zone on the touchdown to Andrews. It was either Butler needs to cover over, Bobby Wagner needs to cover the seam, or Quan Martin needs to not get distracted by the corner route. Depends on what the call was. I put this one up on Twitter at Craig Hoffman if you want to go take a look in more detail. But all in all, Baltimore puts your offense or your defense in a ton of conflict, and they did a really good job of that. And as a result, Washington had more issues with some free runners and guys in space and things like that than they have in probably the previous 3 weeks combined. And I would say that's ultimately fine moving forward because they're not going to face an offense as good as Baltimore's for a while. Big news of the day today.
Number 6.
John Allen. I am so bummed for John. If you're just tuning in, breaking news about an hour ago, it was reported and then confirmed by the team moments later that John Allen is out for the season with a torn pectoral muscle. He's starting to jump off the tape a lot more the last 2 weeks specifically. He's starting to make a ton of plays. He's starting to shed blocks violently. He's starting to get in the backfield. He's chasing things down. He looked like a lot closer to Pro Bowl John Allen the last couple of weeks. And I know some of the productivity wasn't there as much. In this game, he's got a couple of tackles before he exited. He probably had a 5-6 tackle game with the pace he was on. But he's starting to get sacks, tackles for loss, all that stuff. They're going to miss him. I think the good news is Johnny Newton has played well and is probably ready for a little bit more. But John's institutional knowledge and know-how, nevertheless, the leadership and the other things he provides, it's definitely going to be missed. And I feel just absolutely terrible for John.
Number 7.
Got to point it out, though. I hate this, but John might have just played his last snap as a Commander. We'll explore that a little bit later on in the show because we're way behind on time. But with the way the contract is, he is it's very easy to move on, and I think you can make a really good argument to spend that money somewhere else. So what they do with him moving forward is going to be fascinating. We'll detail that a little bit later in the show.
Number 8.
Cliff Kingsbury. Players, not place. Something that I love about Cliff is in mega situations, he's like, all right, who do I want to get the ball to and how do I want to get him the ball? And his ability to scheme up goes and comebacks, throws that Jaden likes in situations where Romo on the broadcast is like, oh, that's going to be a slant. And instead, it's a hitch. Why? Because Jaden likes throwing hitches, not slants, or hitches more than slants. His ability to get Terry isolated or Terry in a good route concept and make him the primary. It's something that for years I have just been mystified at offensive coordinators here not being able to do. Oh, it's this down and distance. We like this concept. Okay, well, make it so the guy that's good is going to be open. If you like the concept so much, enhance it by putting the right guys in the right spots Cliff does that, especially in key situations, and I think that is going to continue to bode well for this team moving forward.
Number 9.
I thought the situational football was pretty good yesterday. I know that there's some consternation about not going fast enough on that final drive that they had offensively. Look, I get it. A little bit faster would have been nice. The problem was getting the stop on defense. They scored with enough time that if they get a stop, they would get the ball back and they'd have enough time for a drive. The problem wasn't the time. The problem was the stop. And at the end of the first half, they managed that as well as you possibly could. They had, one timeout, not a whole lot to work with, needed to get some yardage. They do, and then Seibert, I don't know whether he missed or whether it got deflected. I don't know what the ultimate ruling on that was. But offensively, they did their job.
Number 10.
And then last but not least, Austin Seibert hit a couple long field goals yesterday, and he has been very spotty in his career above 50 yards, even frankly above 40 yards. So the fact that he can make those changes things moving forward for this team. And Dan Quinn, talking in the press conference today, said he wanted to prove to Austin, hey man, I got faith in you, especially after you missed that first one. And that is a big, big deal. I think they'd still like to keep him kicking mostly under 40 where he's perfect in his career. But if that opens up some possibilities, even though they are now 9 for 9 on fourth down on the year, it does allow for a little bit different play calling, a little bit different situational management if you can trust Seibert above 50 yards. All right, when we get back, because that is our first and 10 observations to open the show. First, we do them first, 10 of them, first and 10. Okay, now it's over. Now it's time for you. 301-230-0980. It's a Tell the Truth Monday. 301-230-0980. Your take on the games. Next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube as well if you'd like, at the Team 980. Our phone line is 301-230-0980. That's all the ways you can get in touch with us as we do this Tell the Truth Monday time.
It's Tell the Truth Monday on The Hoffman Show.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth!
Call us now at 301-230-0980 to tell the truth about the Commanders.
You can't handle the truth!
Or hit the comment section at the Team 980 on YouTube.
All right, let's get started with some calls. Let's get started with Reggie in D.C. Reggie, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show. What's your truth coming out of this Commanders' loss to the Ravens?
Craig, you know what, man? Let me be honest with you. I was jilted when Ben Johnson didn't get off the plane and talk to us, right? And I'm like, man, like a retread. And you know what? Second, we got the second choice, or this is the quote. Like in my mind, this is a backup. This is a fallback plan. Man, I'm sick about this. Fast forward, looking the way we played against the best. Some people are calling this the best team in the NFL. I have to be truthful, man. I have never been this excited about the Skins since '91. And I go back in the days with my boys. I'm with the celebration with Mosley and Rippin, and I mean just going back. I cannot be. We played a heck of a game against one of the better. Again, it's no moral victories, but from a fan, I just wanted to see how we measure up, because every time as a fan you wear your rose-colored glasses. We played Miami last year, we got blown out. We played against Buffalo, we get blew out. San Francisco, it's not competitive. Dallas, it's not competitive. Every time we've matched up against an elite, or air quote, elite playoff caliber team, we get embarrassed. Now with Dan Quinn, it seems like, and I don't know whether or not you're a little bit more close than me looking at it as a fan, but as a fan, it appears like this team is taking on his personality, where we're gonna fight, we're gonna scratch, we're gonna claw. So I feel like, telling the truth, I have to literally almost apologize to the fan and me for doubting Quinn and saying that. Because, you watched Ben Johnson yesterday with Detroit. You like, man, he looked real kind of sexy.
He's real good at his job.
Sexy.
Yeah.
Yes, but we look good with Cliff, though. You can't
for sure.
Cliff.
For sure.
Yeah,
and that's
so
the thing,
like,
Reggie, I'm going to let you run. I appreciate the call a ton. I think
buddy.
that it's a great call. We got a lot of folks to get to. Multiple people can be good at the job. Like, Ben Johnson might still be a great head coach. He might have been great here. I think Dan Quinn is the perfect guy to partner with Adam Peters. And I'll tell you this, one thing that I want to point out real quick, and then we'll get back to the phones, is the future is so bright if Peters is really this good. Because some of the best players on this team, and some of the best players the players that embody the stuff that helps you win the most, both from a skill and a mentality standpoint, are the rookies. And Jaden is the obvious easy one. Johnny Newton's got a long way to go to be a all-pro defensive tackle, but I have literally never seen a defensive tackle hustle like that dude. And by the way, I had someone tell me, one of the veteran linemen who've been around playing for other teams, tell me that through all the years of him playing, all the years of him practicing, including against some really, really good defensive tackles, he had never played against someone who played in practice as hard as John Allen. And I'm telling you that watching the tape, Allen compared to Newton, dog. Again, Allen's a better player right now. Newton, in 5 years, what he can become with this kind of work ethic, oh my God. Sandor still, obviously, just tremendous growth week over week. Competitiveness. Luke getting, some of the stuff that he does that's super subtle, that once they understand the NFL game and have more experience and they're a little more veteran, and they obviously will have other rookies underneath them that are continuing to push their level, and this team is going to eventually be built of all Adam Peters draft picks pretty much. Man, the future is really bright. Nevertheless, what they're actually able to do right now, where they can go toe-to-toe against a team like Baltimore. All right, we got a couple of calls still left. We were running late getting into this segment, so let's get back on track with the clock because clock management It's important, kiddos. Quick look at what's trending. Come right back. We'll get right back to the calls on a Tell the Truth Monday. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Let's keep it rolling with the phone calls. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. It's a Tell the Truth Monday, so you tell us what you think about the Commanders after yesterday's game. In this case, a 30-23 loss to the Baltimore Ravens. Let's go to Marvin in Landover. Marvin, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, Mr. Hoffman. It's been a while.
You've got it, Marvin.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, I'm encouraged, but I'm also really still angry about the game itself. You said in the first segment, Benjamin St. Juste was asked to do the impossible, which was basically stand up to like a smaller, quicker wide receiver. And then they never got home with any of the blitzes. It was like they blitzed, but Baltimore kind of saw them coming, and they never even got closer to hitting the quarterback all day. So he had 3 seconds, 4 seconds for deep crossing routes. And it was just like that's a terrible, terrible thing that they put St. Juste through. I thought he played really well, so I'm right there with you with that. But I do know the truth is their defense is definitely still a work in progress. You were absolutely right. About 2 months ago, I talked to you, and you said that it was going to take more than 1 year. And I was with you with that. Boy, it's going to take more than 1 year is the truth. They are, and every Ron Rivera pick, oh, my God, what did we do? Everything terrible. So we're really lost because you needed a corner who could cover, no corner. You needed a pass rusher who could hit the quarterback, no pass rusher. They were missing everywhere. Wide receiver would have been nice, but I think their offense still was really good. Cliff Kingsbury would have been better with Washington than Ben Johnson. he understands the mobile quarterback a little better. I don't know if Ben Johnson really understands it. Sometimes it's the message, not the messenger. And the messenger, not the message. And the messenger right now, Cliff Kingsbury, understands how to use Jaden better than I think Ben Johnson would have. So I'm still encouraged. I think we're maybe 11-win team this year. Maybe. I say that really hesitantly because I was thinking this is a build year. But they could probably get to 10 or 11 wins. So that's a playoff team. I think we hung with a really tough squad. I think we got jerked on a bunch of calls yesterday. You mentioned it, the St. Jude second one, which was in the third quarter, which was just awful. That was awful.
Yeah, it was really bad. There was a couple others that I had down that I was like, There's one that I haven't watched the second half back on the All-22 yet, but I have one marked from the game copy or the TV copy that Noah Brown, I thought, got yanked on one that they didn't call. So there's a bunch of stuff. But Marvin, appreciate the call. And yeah, I mean, I think that they've gotten a lot of stuff right. And, like, that's really encouraging. But at the end of the day, some of the gaps are the ones where they just, like, we can't do everything in 1 year. And we're going to take some flyers on some of these guys that contractually it makes sense to keep around. And some of them have panned out. Some of them haven't. I mean, Quan Martin's been good. He had some moments yesterday, I think. But he's largely been fantastic. He was their second-round pick last year. Like, that's Big Phil, I think, has had a pretty solid year. He's playing pretty consistent ball the last couple of weeks. Like, there's a lot. There are some guys around that they have been able to kind of pull out of the trenches. Just can't save everyone. Which is why they'll eventually replace them. But the reality is that they're doing, I think, they've gotten the compete level so high that they're giving themselves a chance week in and week out. All right, let's go to Gary in Upper Marlboro. Gary, you're our resident optimist. So what's your truth on this Monday?
I agree with just about everything you said, Craig.
I feel like there's a butt coming, Gary, or an accept. Which one is it going to be?
There's a big butt coming.
Okay.
And I've complained on your show before about St. Jude. I think that those calls were ticky-tack yesterday. I give you that. Mm-hmm. But to say it's not his fault and you don't blame him for not being able to cover a guy, I mean, come on, this is professional football, all right? He needs – and this is something that he's done consistently. He gives up chunk yards like nobody's business. This is what his MO has been. When you get closer to the goal line, okay, or it's 3rd and 5 or something like that, he can jam and he can be good under those circumstances. But in the middle of the field, he's horrible. And the stats show that. I mean, I don't think guys should be killing him today. But I think it's a lot of St. Just, misery. It's not just yesterday, but it's what we've seen with this guy over the course of his career.
Totally fair.
And
understood.
I don't think he's a number one corner. Be honest with you, I don't think he's a number 2 corner.
See, that's where I disagree, Gary. I promise I'll let you keep going in a second. But here's what I mean when I say it's not his fault. This is a guy who, at best, is a number 2 corner. Like, we can agree on that. Yeah, he's somewhere, like, is he the number 1, number 2 corner in the league? No. Is he a number 2 corner? At least maybe. But he's being asked to be a number 1. And some of the specific stuff he got beat on yesterday, like, he's having it's one thing to have to cover a shallow cross when you have to run with a guy for 5 yards. Chasing Zay Flowers 25 yards across the field because your blitzes don't get home, there's very few corners in the entire league that can do that. And that's where some of the stuff where they gave up some of this chunk yardage yesterday that was on him. I thought there were bigger issues in the secondary yesterday. And people are going to point the blame at St. Jude's because those 2 PI calls were so impactful in the game. But if you agree that there were bad calls, okay, well, let's take those off the board. What are the next biggest problems in the secondary? I would tell you the coverage of the linebacker yesterday gave a ton to be desired, and some of the big space, like that completion of Bateman in the middle of the field where there's no one within 15 yards of him. Part of that is because the linebackers are caught up in no man's land off a play action fake. Part of that is the safeties are their eyes are getting distracted. So I thought there was a lot bigger problems in the secondary yesterday than St. Jude if you take away those calls, which I personally do because I didn't think they were good calls.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that argument. And you're right. There was a lot more going on in St. Just. But I think a lot of fans are just tired of seeing the same thing with him. I mean, he gives up chunk plays again, like last year. That's his MO. He gives up a lot of chunk plays. But I agree with you on the GM. I was not big on Austin Eckler. I was not big on Zach Ertz, and I was completely wrong. I thought Ertz was washed up. I thought Eckler was washed up. But these guys are playing at a level that they played at when they were top of the league. It's really good. I think Adam Peters gets an A+ for everything that he's done up to this point. And you're right, you can't fix everything this year. And Jonathan Allen, I do agree with you. I think he's played his last game with Washington. I think they need to move on from him and use that contract, that money for something else. But you have to be encouraged with the Commanders up to this point. I had them winning 5 games coming into this season. I think you said 8 or 9. I think you're right. These guys are playing a heck of a lot better than I thought. Now, they haven't beaten any world beaters yet. I think the teams that they played have been, their records are not good, but they passed the eye test. And so I think you have to be optimistic at this point.
100%,
Thanks
Gary.
for taking my call.
Yeah, you got it, Gary. Always good to chat with you, even when we spar a little bit. I think the thing too about where Washington is, and you look, they haven't beaten any great teams. Like, we'll see what Cincinnati is. Obviously, they beat the Giants last night. Their offense looks really good. I mean, their defense looked good last night, but they're also facing the Giants. But I think Cincinnati could still pull themselves into the wild card picture. They obviously lost the 2 best teams they played. Week 1 was a rookie debut for Jaden. And then they competed with Baltimore. But, man, I was doing some stuff earlier today prepping for next week and doing our online pick show for next week that I do on Mondays on YouTube. And there's a lot of bad football teams. And the Commanders are definitively not one of them. A lot of the league is the teams that they beat during the 4-game winning streak. It's a weird year in the NFL. Some of it is injury adjacent. Some of it is coaching and teams being kind of stuck in limbo. Some of it is talented teams like the Eagles that just have their head somewhere up their own behinds. There's some good quarterbacks with really bad supporting casts like in Dallas. Dak's a good player. I don't know what they've done with their roster. Their roster's a nightmare. So there is a lot of bad football teams that I do think Washington is in a great spot because I definitively don't think they're a bad football team. If you don't play in the NFC North, you're kind of all right in every other division in the league. It's a weird year. The last thing that I'll say quickly about St. Juice is that if they could get some of the pass rush and some of the other stuff figured out, I think that they would be in a lot better shape on that. And I think that Baltimore deserves a lot of credit because I think they were not uniquely, but they're one of these teams that has some stuff figured out on the offensive line and some of the pass rush pressures and some of the calls they make. You just kind of have to make some choices. We're either going to dedicate the resources to the run or they're going to run on us. We're going to dedicate the resources to the run. Okay, well, that means you're one-on-one on the back end and you better get home on your blitzes. And Washington couldn't do that yesterday. It let St. Juice out to dry. It wasn't like he was losing instantly. It wasn't like he was losing by 15, 20 yards. No, he's getting beat by 2 yards. And in the NFL, that's open. Hopefully he can continue to do better. But I think that, I don't want to overstate it. I would say the other last thing about St. Juice, this is actually something I really wanted to point out from Gary's call. And it's on one hand, it's semantics, but on the other hand, it's really important. I understand the building frustration that a lot of the results feel similar, where last year it's this dude gives up chunk yards all the time. In the beginning of this year, he gave up some really big chunk plays that were his fault 100%. And I was like, man, is this just always how it's going to be with him, where he's in position and can't make a play? The last 5 weeks, really the last 4 weeks, but the last 5 weeks even after that Tampa game, he has made corrections. He is playing significantly better football. And that yesterday, yes, he gives up some chunk plays, but a lot of that is hey, it's a deep comeback and you have no safety help and you have to guard against the go route. And the reason you're in one-on-one coverage guarding against the go route is because you are praying that your pass rush gets home. And if there's enough time to get the comeback off, if a dude has time to run 20 yards downfield, break off his route, and break back to the ball, that's a pass rush loss. But what you can't do is give up the fade ball where if the pass rush gets home and they just loft one up and the receiver runs underneath it. So there's things like that I realize are more nuanced. It's not what you want to hear. It's not very sexy. It's not very fun. But he is, it's not the same. He is playing significantly better football, and at times he's being playing better football against players that are still better than him, and the teammates around him and the infrastructure around him is failing him, and thus he's still giving up chunk plays. But he is not just he's not freaking Santa Clausing chunk plays in the way that he did the last couple of years. Other teams are at least having to earn it, and that's what you want, is at least the competition level to be high, and he's got that, and the technique to be correct. He's got that. And now, hopefully, over the next couple of weeks, because he still is a young player, like he's still in his rookie contract in his third year in the league, maybe he can get even better. Maybe he starts making some of these plays. So I'm not selling all my BSJ stock, even though I realized that yesterday a lot of you, you're like, I don't have any left because I sold it last year. And I understand that too. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. We'll take your phone calls again coming up at 6:30. I do want to get back to the John Allen question later on in the show. Maybe we'll do that at 6:30. Do you think John Allen has played his last snap in Washington? But coming up next, we'll ask that very question and much more of Michael Phillips on a Michael Monday here on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. Hour number 2 of the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube. We got a fun chat going there if you want to check us out on video at the Team 980. It is a Monday. It is 5 o'clock. That means it is time for Not My Beat, and it is time for Michael Phillips, everybody.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Of course, Michael Phillips from our sister station, our Odyssey family, 910 The Fan, down in Richmond. You can hear him 10 a.m. to noon. If you're in the D.C. area or anywhere outside of the Richmond area, you can listen on the free Odyssey app. Michael, I have never hosted a radio show where I take calls after a loss of people apologizing to the general manager. How'd your show go today?
I love it. It's a building process. There's a ways to go. We didn't, we do the Misery Monday branding. I said I don't feel like it's a Misery Monday. Now I will tell you, up there in the press box in Baltimore, I was sat between Chris Russell and Grant Paulson, so I feel like I had a lot of conviviality there. That may have influenced my thoughts on the game, but I wasn't bummed out for most of the game.
Yeah, no, I wasn't either. I mean, I was like, to the extent, I was actually, I would say, Michael, more bummed out during the game because you're just going, damn it, Baltimore's really good. I don't think they're going to beat them because Baltimore just can get what they want offensively. Lamar, Henry, like Monken was in his bag. Turns out some of that was actually Lamar audibling at the line of scrimmage. Logan told me that from his view on the sideline. Like he could tell that Lamar, whether it's Monken sending him to the line with 2 plays or Lamar just having the entire playbook, like he was able to really operate at a high level. But all in all, like Washington came back, and I think if they can get the stop at the end, which didn't feel like they were going to do, but if they somehow found a way to get the stop at the end, like I feel like Jaden could have certainly driven them down and tied that thing up. And I think that's why people today are kind of like, yeah, they lost, but like it wasn't like Miami last year. It wasn't like all these other times they've been blown out. And I think that maybe even more so in this loss than some of the other wins, people understand the project a little bit better than, again, even the 4-game winning streak that preceded yesterday's game.
Oh, and people would trade results this season for a franchise quarterback in a heartbeat, and it sure feels like that's what we're doing here. You nailed it. I mean, every time number 5 came out there and they had to have it, he got it. When they went down 14, it's okay, they're on the ropes. They need a score here. He got one. Oh, man, the game's slipping away. Oh, he's there right before halftime. I just want to zoom in on that, Craig. That's my favorite possession of the whole game. Dan Quinn gets aggressive with the timeouts. While Baltimore still got the ball and the score isn't even imminent yet, he knows what he wants to do and he knows what's coming. He gets Jaden the ball with some time left. And I know no points were created from that drive, but I'm focused on the process, not the result. The process was so good. Jaden knew exactly what to do, exactly where to get them, exactly when to clock the ball. That was as close to, oh my gosh, we've got something, as I've seen in any of these games, the wins included.
Michael Phillips, 910 The Fan, down in Richmond with us here on the Hoffman Show. Anything else that really stood out to you about how these teams competed yesterday from being at the game? Something that you noticed, whether it's a physicality, whether it's some of the communication stuff, anything in particular that you're like, I definitely noticed this because I was here, and as you're driving back to Richmond last night, that you were thinking about positively or negatively for Washington?
Yeah, you'll notice it on the film, but they were stacking the box. They made the conscious choice defensively. We're going against the run, and we're going to see what happens with the pass. And we saw what happened with the pass, and they were particularly vulnerable, I felt, on the play action, where they're going in on the run and just didn't have anybody back on the pass. I thought it was a great atmosphere. It was a fun day for a game, fun crowd for a game, both sides going hard. And certainly in the locker room after, there weren't a lot of guys saying, oh, my gosh, we lost. This is terrible. There was still a lot of confidence, and it felt more like a baseball clubhouse after a loss, right? There's 162 of them. You can't go too hard, high or low in baseball. It kind of felt like that, like, hey, that was a game. That was another step forward for this team. I will say my concern coming out of it has nothing to do with what I saw on the field. It's these defensive line injuries. That was a lot of them for one game, and they don't have depth. They just don't at this stage. There's no addition by subtraction. It's subtraction by subtraction at this point, and I fear that's what we're about to do.
So we'll circle back to those in a second, but I want to follow up on the locker room atmosphere. Are you saying that is a good thing, that they treated it more 1 of 162, baseball style, like, okay, we're not going to get too bummed out about this? Or is that worrying at all? Or is it like, and I guess the question really is, how does that compare to all the many other losses that you've covered in your illustrious Washington football reporting career?
Yeah, so when you win, there's music. So that's like the distinguishing factor there. When you win, there's music, guys are upbeat, everybody feels good. When you lose, generally, there's silence. Everybody just handles their business, shuffles along, gets out of there, knows they didn't do the job they came there to do. There wasn't music yesterday, but there was chatter. Guys weren't hanging their heads, and a lot of times when you do an interview and you hear in the interviews from the losing locker room, it's the guys talking in the real hushed tone, Craig, because they don't want to make waves, and everybody's being real quiet in there. Everybody was conducting business at a regular volume. Dan Quinn's message to the team after the game was, you did some good things today. You did some things we're going to clean up. This team remains on the right trajectory. And I think that's accurate. I think that's true.
I do as well, and I also commend you. Doing tricks like this is very easy with an actual microphone. To do it with a cell phone, Michael. You're turning into one of us. You're a real radio person now. You're not just a writer trying to do radio. Michael, that was your graduation. Congratulations, Michael Phillips, everybody.
Today is the day he became president.
Just wait for the if you know, you know. Let it hit everybody and quickly move on. Okay, Jonathan Allen out for the season. Let's start with the here and now, and then I'm going to ask you the sports talk radio. Has he played his last snap? So you can have that ruminating in the back of your head. Last snap in Washington, ruminating in the back of your head. But for the here and now, how big of a loss is John Allen? What do they try to do to replace him? And why are you concerned that won't work, besides the obvious that Jonathan Allen is awesome?
That's very well put. His Jonathan Allenness is going to be very hard to replace by guys not named John Allen. If there's a position where you can have hope on the depth, it is this one. Fedarian Mathis, I think, has outplayed my expectations this year. I want to phrase that very carefully. He's not John Allen, but he has given them some really good snaps this year. All right, so that's good. Johnny Newton, obviously, they're pinning a lot of hope for him on the future. The future is now, to borrow a cliche, and he's got to step up and be ready to go. There's probably enough there to sustain a rotation if you can get consistent production out of Mathis and ramp up his snaps. I think that's one where there's probably enough to go around, while acknowledging exactly what you said. There's only one of that dude.
Right. Like, Newton has been, like, watching that dude on tape is really fun. He plays so hard. But one, can he sustain that when he's got to take on more snaps? And two, what does that do to your depth? I'm also curious to see who they call up, because they had a couple of guys like your boy Pollard, the kid out of UVA, right? Do I have the right guy? Norrell Pollard? Sound familiar?
You're right. I've been out of the UVA game for a minute. Olamide Zaccheaus is my UVA guy. You may have just caught me off guard with a Wahoo poll, and I just embarrassed
that, or he went to Virginia Tech, and now the entire Commonwealth. Say
UVA
Commonwealth.
Fans are mad you misidentified him. The Virginia Tech fans are mad we missed him. I just feel
he went to Tech. God dang it. I apologize to all the UVA fans and all the Virginia Tech fans. I apologize to the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. I do know at least I'm supposed to call it a Commonwealth because I used to live there. I very much like your state/Commonwealth, and I promise to never do it again. I do know that Norrell Pollard led all of Division I in pressure rate for defensive tackles last year. And so, is he the guy? See, I brought us back, Michael. So they've got some interesting potential guys, obviously they just brought up Obata, so he can play a little bit inside in certain spots when they want it. Like when Allen's mobility is useful, they can play Obata inside. But also, Dorrance Armstrong, huge loss if he's out long term. This is where the fact that this is year one of a rebuild, I think, where they don't have the depth of guys that they would like to have in the long term, Michael, really starts to potentially bite them if these guys are out. We know Allen's out for the year, but if some of these other guys are also unable to go.
Yeah, Armstrong had some really good snaps too, and it accumulates up front there, and not to suggest that this is going to be a Super Bowl team with them, but that's the sort of thing that could swing some close games. Not Carolina. I still think they should handle Carolina, but this Chicago game's shaping up to be a lot of fun, right? Caleb Williams is catching his strides, kind of stealing from the Jaden Daniels playbook. They're playing with a lot of tempo. It's going to be a game like this one. A couple of guys kind of playing against the mirror, so to speak, in this game. I think that, when you have those games, the Steelers game, right, where the Steelers defense is so legit, anything you do gets magnified because you're probably going to be playing a 10-7 game. Those are the games where these absences really start to matter. You just hope it won't mean the difference between 8 and 9 playoffs and not playoffs, or 9 and wherever that line is. You just hope it doesn't mean you're on the wrong side of it when they tally them up.
Okay, now time for the big Sports Talk Radio question of the day. John Allen out for the season. We know what his contract situation is. If you don't know, I'll fill you in so that you can join the we. He's got no guaranteed money left. He's got one more year, which they can move on. They can just say, like, hey, you're cut before the start of the league year. Jonathan Allen is then a free agent. There's no dead cap money for the Washington Commanders. Has Jonathan Allen, for any number of reasons, played his final snap as a Washington Commander, Michael Phillips?
This actually, if you had asked me this question Saturday morning, I would have said yes, he's gone after this year somehow. Whatever that method is, this will be his last year in Washington. I would have felt pretty confident with that statement. In a lot of ways, this muddies the waters more than it would have if he hadn't. If he had played the whole season, had John Allen numbers season, he wouldn't have wanted to play on that last year. They would have liked that there's value. They got to control where he goes. They could have orchestrated a trade. I think the path was clear for him to roll on out. The question is, does the market have more money for John Allen than that last year of his contract has, which I believe is 17. Do I have that correct?
I will double check that number.
Double check while I keep talking, but I believe 17 is the number in his last year. Is the market want to pay him more than that, right? So that prompts a trade. Does the team feel he's worth less than that, which would prompt a cut, which would prompt them to move on? At the risk of giving the most lukewarm take, I think that may actually be the number next year. He may think, I want to play one more, drive my value up going into free agency. The team may think we'll ride one more run with that. He has a lot to offer. I think that the chances that he hasn't played his last snap here actually went up with this injury.
That's fascinating. That's an interesting thought, because I do think it was going to become clearer as the season went because he was starting to play better. And that I totally agree with. And the number, so his cap hit is 23 next year. His base is 15.5. So if they cut him after, use the little snip right there, pre-release 6-1, save about $9 million. Oh, sorry, nope, that's the wrong one. We want 2025. We want the 2025 scissors icon on Spotrac, which is currently not working. So
and there's the roster bonuses and all that. So 17 is probably about the cash number in the end. The beauty of this is, this isn't a team that has to worry about cap space. They may not even spread it over 2 years. They may accelerate the whole hit if they cut him, if that's the direction they go, because they can absorb it this year. All these calculations are, Jaden Daniels is on his rookie contract for 2 more years, right? Obviously, you've given him the 5th year and then the extension. Year 3 is the push your chips in year, which we've historically seen with rookie quarterbacks. So any decision you make is with an eye toward, what does our team look like in year 3 of Jaden Daniels, the lowest amount we will ever pay for quality quarterbacking, and the most mature that quality quarterbacking is going to be at the cheap price.
Right. And you're right. 17 is savings, 6 of dead cap, which is the prorated money, but there's no additional dead cap if they cut him. So that's the John Allen number / Michael's John Allen answer. As far as what we saw from the offense yesterday, like, how do you feel about their performance against the best defense that they've faced? 23 points is obviously below the 31 they were averaging. I think there's a lot to like. There's obviously some other stuff that maybe you get concerned about. How did you overall feel about the offensive performance yesterday?
Yeah, Craig, you bring me on for the hottest of hot takes. I understand that. I'm here to deliver. I like this Terry McLaurin kid. I think he's got a future in football. I think he could be all right. I love that Terry's involved so much. I loved both the touchdown catches. They were both so good on both the throw and the catch. I just think that's so crucial going forward, that chemistry is there. And we've seen more and more of it each week. And we've gone from we're going to force feed him a screen to we're actually drawing things up that really work for both him and Jaden, and the timing and the communication are very, very good. The chemistry is very good. I love seeing that. Up front, I saw a lot of one-on-ones that they lost on the offensive line. I'm not here to cast blame. Ravens have some good players. There were some times where Jaden just didn't have the time to do what the play called for him to do, and I think that led to a couple of the early things. I was surprised they didn't try to establish the run a little more. I'm aware that B-Rob wasn't there, but I think very highly of Eckler, and I think highly of Kingsbury's ability to scheme this thing up. I'm a little surprised they didn't go harder on that earlier. I don't know that it would have made a difference, but I think that what you saw on the whole was an offense that got exposed to adversity for the first time, that was playing from behind for the first time, and I didn't see any inclination that it impacted number 5. He remained cool. He remained fully in command the whole time. That's my big takeaway, and it's a positive.
No, I agree with that. So the thing that I'd be curious to talk to Cliff about, and I'm sure he'll get asked a version of this on Thursday, is did the choices around running the football and your lack of success running the football have more to do with Brian Robinson or his absence or the Ravens defense? Because both those things can influence your decision making, and depending on which one is which, maybe you find other ways, like you run McNichols on some of the stuff you like with Robinson. If you think that you can get Baltimore, if you think Baltimore is not gettable, then it's like, well, what's the point of ramming our head into the wall? I'm curious what you think of why Washington struggled to run the football so much yesterday, and how you think that influenced Cliff's decision to call more pass plays.
Yeah, my gut is it was B-Rob related. I think that I think it did account for the fact that their starting running back wasn't in the lineup, and not that they don't trust Eckler, they very clearly do, but it looks like Cliff thinks the best way to get Eckler the ball is through a screen pass in space on the toss, kind of, a little bit different than the traditional handoff and go and move the pile. That was my gut. I'd be curious what your read on it was, because I think it was B-Rob driven to a decent extent.
I think it's sometimes hard to separate the two. I don't think that they had any kind of run schemes that they felt really good about. There was a couple, they got like some 4, some 6-yard carries, some things that would be considered successful runs. But there are also some stuff that I think they've liked and excelled at this year that Baltimore just ate up. And I feel like if you're Cliff and you feel like every run call is a guess and you feel better about just calling something in quick game or whatever, I'd probably just do the whatever. And I think that probably enters into his mind yesterday as Jaden's still performing well, that I don't know that we can run on these guys. And at that point, like, why waste downs more than we have to?
Yeah, it's true that, Jaden was the primary stick that was stirring the offense, so to speak, yesterday, and it's certainly they didn't put too much on him. There was one designed run early. I don't love the designed runs on early downs. To me, save those for when it matters. But you do it early to set up concepts late, and so I can't get too mad about it because they've had so much success this year so far doing it. Loved seeing Zach Ertz get some action. McCaffrey got a little action. It was nice to hear a lot of different names and numbers called, which tells me that they're still scheming up and they're still operating at a high level in terms of what they're doing offensively. There's no plateau there, at least that I can see so far.
For sure. And I think the one other thing that they would have probably liked to do more yesterday was get a little bit more vertical down the field. They never could kind of stretch the field with any super deep shots. They threw one or two, the one to Terry that he threw out of bounds against a blitz, which is like good. You give up a 50, you throw up a 50-50 ball because that's the only thing you can do in that situation. And the fact they take those shots, I like. But it means the linebackers can creep up and like you kind of can stay in the box. Your safeties aren't nearly as far back. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it in terms of the setup there. Last thing for Michael Phillips, super big picture here, Michael. As we wrap up, of course, you can check MP on the mic 10 a.m. to noon on 910 The Fan in Richmond on the free Odyssey app. Does the fact that they went toe-to-toe with Baltimore, albeit they lost, but they go toe-to-toe, they're now 4-2, Dallas gets wrecked, Philly looks like a mess, the Giants are the Giantsing. If you're Adam Peters, do you look at the trade deadline any differently?
I agree with the first half of your take, which is the NFC East is ripe for the picking this year. And these guys match up well against the Cowboys too, and the Eagles. That's all in their heads, so that'll take care of itself. I agree. The NFC East is there to be won. It's funny because the past colors the future so much around here. I just can't shake Ron Rivera's first team winning the NFC East, which I think was a net negative for everybody involved long term. That Ron thought he had it rolling. He didn't. He made some roster decisions as a result that I think he probably regrets. The fan base thought they were further along than they were. Not to suggest this is exactly the same, because this isn't exactly the same. It's actually quite different. But I think that Adam Peters' tasking is to look at this as a 5-year project, to look at this as building towards that year 3 of Jaden Daniels and then building a sustainable winner off of that. If I were making the call from Josh Harris's office to Adam Peters, my instructions would be, don't change your approach. Don't watch the standings. Don't watch the scoreboard. This isn't a Super Bowl team. This isn't the team that's going to win it all. Don't do something you'll regret later because you're excited right now in this moment.
I think that's good advice. I would tell him, stay diligent. Don't be afraid to do something if you like it, but don't do anything crazy. Which is, by the way, like Josh Harris, investor mind, that is, I think, kind of how he thinks anyway about this.
It is.
So, when Josh Harris gets involved, it's asking good questions to make Adam Peters think like that, which I think is why he's been a relatively good owner across multiple sports. Michael Phillips, 910 The Fan in Richmond. Also listen on 105.1 FM and, of course, on the free Odyssey app. Michael, always a pleasure, sir. See you Sunday, or are you gonna pull another wacky bit and wind up in this studio?
I think it's a couch day on Sunday.
You're not enticed by the Carolina Panthers?
I'm going to be there for Chicago, though. My hot take of the weekend is I think they're going to move that Bears game to 425. I think Tony Romo is going to circle back around, spend some more time with the fellas.
Michael, if they want to do that and they do not move this, I don't care. Do it now. Do it today. Move this Carolina game to 1 o'clock. What are we doing? Why is this game at 425? Why do I need to be at Northwest Stadium until 9 o'clock at night? And why does John Keim need to be there till 1 a.m.? I think that's a question for John. But, the point stands.
It's a full wacky. It makes no sense at all.
I guess it was going to be Bryce Young versus Jaden. That was the thought. But
no, because it's not 425. It's not the national TV slot. It was never. I don't think TV had any hand in this. That's so why I'm confused.
Weird. Because, by the way, do you know there's only 3 games in the 4 o'clock window this Sunday?
Yeah, but this one was never a serious candidate to be flexed. They've got a good marquee game on Sunday. Sometimes they play like that opener against Tampa was 425 because it gets freaking hot in Tampa in September. Like that made sense. Like you don't want the guys out there, you don't want the fans out there in the heat at 1 o'clock. I can't come up with the reason on this one.
To annoy me, and it's working. Thanks, Roger. Really appreciate it. All right, Mike will be watching from his couch, but we'll talk to him on Monday anyway. Michael, thank you, sir. That's Michael Phillips with us here on The Hoffman Show. When we get back, speaking of the rest of the NFL, we'll go around it. Analysis from each and every game of the NFL weekend next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. If you're driving home right now, you're like, man, I'm enjoying the show. I would like to keep listening when I get home. The free Odyssey app, available on all your Amazon Alexa devices. It's also on your phone, so you can just, pop that up. Whether you got headphones in, you're just blaring it out in your kitchen, or pop on YouTube on your smart TV, the YouTube app, and search for the Team 980, and we are live there. Right now, it is time for us to take our one step away from the Commanders-Ravens game and go around the NFL. I will tell you, special treat, which some of you will love and some of you will hate, coming up at 6 o'clock. We have a special guest for our Pick 6. Metal Chris is not our special guest. Metal Chris is in for Anthony today. Ant's feeling sick. But because Anthony's not here, I'm going to tackle our trip around the NFL solo and then a special guest at 6 o'clock. You just have to stay tuned to see who it is, and then you guys will either love or hate it, because that's kind of the kind of reaction that human being garners. But he'll be in studio coming up at 6 p.m. Right now, though, it is time to go around the NFL. Of course, we talked already about the 49ers-Seahawks game late last week. A couple of big plays for San Francisco, and the inability for Seattle to get stops when they need it ultimately leads to a 36-24 49ers win. In some ways, it was closer than that. In some ways, it was very much not. Okay, Jags and Bears. I hate the Jacksonville Jaguars so much. Being a fan of theirs must be miserable. It looked like they had finally figured some things out. Their offense had been cooking for a couple weeks in a row. Their defense finally did enough for them to win a football game. They get off the schneid. They're going to London, where they're, used to playing. They have the Bears, who are a bit up and down. Sure, they got a little swagger, but that was against the Carolina Panthers. And then they get freaking dump trucked. Just absolutely bamboozled by Caleb Williams and company, 35-16, including giving up 14 points in the second and fourth quarters alone. The Jags did at some point have a 3-0 lead in this game as they got on the board early. But Trevor Lawrence, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Caleb Williams, 4 touchdowns and a pick. DeAndre Swift, another touchdown as well, 17 carries, 91 yards. The distribution of catches for Chicago was fantastic. Cole Kmet, 5 targets, 5 catches. Keenan Allen, 5 catches, 5 targets. Rome Odunze had 2 for 40 on 2 targets. DeAndre Swift, 4 targets, 4 catches. You notice here, not a lot of incompletions. DJ Moore, even though they got him a bunch of short stuff, he didn't get any big explosives, but they still targeted him, kept him involved in the game. 5 targets, 4 catches, 20 yards. All in all, Williams, just 6 incompletions on the day. Mega efficient. Definitely making that Commanders-Bears game in a couple of weeks more interesting. And by the way, I believe the number is now 12 of 13 games the Chicago Bears defense has given up 21 points or less, as they hold the Jags to just 16. The Packers, they're a good football team. The Cardinals, they're not. A lot of bad football teams. If you're in the NFC North, good. If you're anyone else, 50-50 at best. Kyler, just 214 yards, not very efficient. Touchdown, no picks, but just didn't get the ball anywhere. 6.7 yards per attempt. Meanwhile, Jordan Love, 8.1, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick, 22 of 32. Josh Jacobs, 18 carries for 62 yards, so they were able to find a nice balance. Really, it's not just Jacobs, though. Emmanuel Wilson, 7. Bo Melton, 2. Chris Brooks, 4. Jordan Love had 5. They ran an end around to their tight end, Tucker Kraft. They had another one to Jaden Reed. In all, 38 carries for $179 on the ground to go with the 258 and 4 touchdowns through the air for Green Bay. This offense is nasty. Romeo Doubs had 2 touchdowns. Did help my fantasy team, just lose by less. Whatever. 34-13 the final. Packers 4-2, Cardinals 2-4. Colts 20, Titans 17. One of the wackiest stat lines you will ever see in the history of the league. This is totally not fair to the player, but I'm going to say it out loud anyway. Calvin Ridley had 0 catches for 0 yards on 8 targets. 8 targets. And really, it should be targets in air quotes, because a lot of these were just No shot. This is not a reflection of Calvin Ridley. It is a reflection of their offense. It is a reflection of Will Levis. You don't bring in a guy that's that good and not give him opportunities, and that is exactly what they did. It's part of the reason their offense stinks. Meanwhile, Joe Flacco, last-minute start. Anthony Richardson had been cleared, was expected to play. Whatever happens in warm-ups or right before the game, they switch course. He is expected to play this week. I believe it's against the Bengals. But Joe Flacco, 22 of 38, 189 yards, 2 touchdowns, gets the job done. Josh Downs, who they were considering putting on IR. You might have heard Jim Nantz say this during the game, the Commanders game on CBS. Downs, hey, is he going to have to go on IR? Pittman, is he going to have to go on IR? No, apparently not. 3 catches, 35 yards, and a big touchdown. Josh Downs, who's quickly developing into one of the best slot receivers in football. 7 catches on 9 targets for 66 yards and a touchdown. Colts defense playing a little bit better. Zaire Franklin leading the way with 9 tackles, 20-17. Colts get to 3-3. The Titans a paltry 1-4. Texans and Patriots, 41-21 the final. But some signs of life from the Patriots, and specifically from Drake May. C.J. Stroud, he was sensational. 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Tidy, 20 of 31, only 192 yards, but did what they needed to do. Joe Mixon and company really damaging on the ground. 13 carries for 102 and a touch. Dameon Pierce, 18 carries, 76 yards and a touchdown. Each of them had a 50-plus yard carry. All in all, 28 carries for $192 on the ground. That's right. The Texans had 192 yards on the ground, and C.J. Stroud threw for 192 through the air. What are the odds? Meanwhile, for May, showed some of the really high-end talent that he's got. Also showed some of the stuff that drives you absolutely bonkers. He is a Derek Klassenberg from the Derek Klassen from the Athletic Football Show said he is a push the limits player. You know, your kid who's just always pushing your buttons and want to see how much they can get away with. That's Drake May, but in quarterback form, especially right now in his first career start. 20 of 33, 243, 3 touchdowns. Also 2 picks, took 4 sacks, and all in all, it adds up to a 31 QBR. Unfortunately, for May in New England, he was also their leading rusher. That can't happen. Antonio Gibson, our old pal, 13 carries, 19 yards. That's a yard and a half a carry. Ugh. And by the way, he had a 7-yarder. So the other 12 carries went for 12 yards. Drake May, 5 carries, 38 yards. They obviously need to get him some help, but against a good Houston defense, Drake May shows some promise in his debut. Same can't be said for some of the other rookie quarterbacks making their debuts we're going to talk about, including, oh my God, what happened to the Saints? Buccaneers 51, Saints 27, in truly one of the wildest games in NFL history. Baker Mayfield threw 3 picks in the first half, and his team scored 51 points. The Saints scored 27 points in the game because they scored 27 points in the second quarter. Yeah. They had a 27-24 lead in a game they lost 51-27. Mayfield, when it's all said and done, 24 of 36, 325, 4 touchdowns, 3 picks. Man, does that dude know how to stuff a stat sheet. Sean Tucker, let's go Orange. The 22-year-old running back out of Syracuse, wearing the Syracuse number 44. Love that. 14 carries for 136 yards. He also had 3 catches for 56 yards and a touchdown. Bucky Irving, their other rookie running back, 14 carries for 81 yards and a touchdown. Godwin, 11 for 125, 2 touchdowns on the day. And on the other side, the debut for Spencer Rattler, yikes, bro, 22 of 40 for 243, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. Had a couple of nice moments, but ultimately a lot of the stuff that scared people away from him in the draft kind of popped up in this game. It was his first career start, is what it is, but you see some of the warts, if you will, on Spencer Rattler. When we get back, the back half of the NFL's day, we'll continue our trip around the NFL, including the rest of the division games for Washington, a.k.a. Dallas, Philly, New York, how they did, some analysis on it next on the Team 980. But first, a look at what's trending. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 6 o'clock, we go into our pick six. 6 players we picked Friday that we thought would have a huge impact on whether the Commanders win or lost. How did they do? We reveal coming up at 6 o'clock. But we continue now going around the NFL. We pick up in the afternoon window with the Browns and the Eagles, a game that neither team deserved to win. These teams are both just absolute dumpster fires in their own special way. The top headline right now on ESPN.com is that Nick Sirianni apologizes for how he directed his energy after his team's win, a.k.a. I'm sorry for yelling at my own fans for barely beating the Browns. Jalen Hurts, 16 of 25, 264, 2 touchdowns, just 47 yards on 18 carries for Saquon Barkley. Of course, the Browns defense is solid, but man, that is a rough outing. A.J. Brown, huge in his return, 6 catches, 116 yards on 9 targets, has a touchdown in there as well. Devontae Smith, 3 for 64. Jahan Dotson on the board, one catch, 10 yards on 3 targets. The big loss, though, for Philly in this one, Dallas Goedert hurt his hamstring. We'll see what his status is moving forward, but Goddard out for now. On the Cleveland side of things, Watson, your typical 16 of 23 for 168 yards, no touchdowns, no picks, solid 34.6 QBR. They can't run the ball either, only 100 yards on 25 carries, which not going to work. Need to be more explosive. They found no explosive plays pretty much on the day, except for one 35-yard catch to Jerry Jeudy. Yikes. So Cleveland 1-5. Yet Kevin Stefanski today will stick with Deshaun Watson because, quote, he gives us the best chance to win. Kevin, blink twice if your owner is just holding you hostage and then is going to fire you anyway, and you wish you'd started someone else. Stefanski looks at camera and blinks as rapidly as he can. Chargers 23, Broncos 16. Big win for the Chargers because all of a sudden, like, the middle tier of the AFC, like once you get past the Chiefs, basically, maybe one or two other teams, but the middle of the AFC is not very good. At the very least, it's muddy. Like, there's some decent teams. They all have their warts. They all have their strengths. But you're telling me that the running game that the Chargers have, plus the defense they have, with the intensity that Harbaugh gets out of those guys, plus Justin Herbert, isn't going to be enough to make the playoffs in the AFC? Man, feels like it just might be. And a team like Denver's who they're going to have to beat. Bo Nix in that offense is not very good. We'll see it again, by the way, on Thursday Night Football, the Sean Payton reunion game against New Orleans. Nix, 19 of 33, 216, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Also had 61 yards rushing, but they couldn't really get anything else going on the ground. Herbert, meanwhile, 237, a touchdown through the air, and J.K. Dobbins, 25 for 96 on the ground and a touchdown. But they play good defense. You know, they're starting to get some of their guys back. Some of the guys playing a little bit better, more consistent football. And this Chargers team's one to watch. Denver's defense is legit, but they got to get some support for their offense. Speaking of legit defenses, and one that's actually on the Commanders' schedule moving forward, the Steelers 32, Raiders 13. Raiders are a mess, despite the fact that Brock Bowers is ridiculously good. He had 9 catches for 71 yards against the Steelers defense. The Raiders can't run the ball for anything. Average 3 yards a carry on 19 carries. Ask Aiden O'Connell to throw it 40 times as TJ Watt's coming after him again and again. And Justin Fields just doesn't have to do a whole lot. 14 to 24 for 145. Rushes the ball for 59 yards, averages over 5 a carry. Najee Harris, 14 for 106 and a touchdown. By the way, Fields had 2 touchdowns on the ground. So they find enough. And then defensively, they got guys that make plays. Patrick Queen, 13 tackles in the game. TJ Watt, 5, but 2 of them are behind the line of scrimmage. They just know how to play. And a team like the Raiders are just feast material for the Steelers and that defense, and feast they did. Lions, 47, Cowboys, 9. I'm pausing so you guys can finish laughing. Okay, I think that's gonna. I got to continue with the show, but you get the point. Like, wow, 47-9. I thought Dallas would keep this close. I thought there was a chance that the Lions could really run it up. I thought, though, hey, Dallas is pretty good offensively. Dak can do some things. Detroit's been struggling in coverage a little bit. Like, they'll find some plays. No. Detroit got so bored in this game that by the end, the second half, they threw like 3 different passes to linemen. They had Dan Skipper, their extra offensive tackle, line up not as a tight end. They put him out at receiver at one point, just for kicks and giggles. They threw a hook and lateral to Penei Sewell, their right tackle, in the second half of this game. Straight up disrespectful by Ben Johnson and company in a way that I frankly enjoy. Detroit, 20 points in the second, 10 points in the third, 10 points in the fourth. That's right. 3 of their 4 quarters, they scored double digits, 47-9. Prescott, awful. 17 of 33 for 178. No touchdowns, 2 picks. They got absolutely nothing on the ground. Rico Dowdle, 5 for 25. Zeke, 8 for 17. Just brutal. Meanwhile, the Lions rushed for 184 as a team. Goff, 315, 3 touchdowns, no picks. But it obviously was not all great for Detroit. They lose Aiden Hutchinson for the season. Nasty compound fracture of his leg, so he had to have emergency surgery. Looks like everything was successful there, but he is going to be out for the season. So the NFL sack leader done for Detroit. They have to figure out how to replace some of his production because he was obviously a huge driver of not just what they want to do in the production, but how they wanted to play. To be able to rely on a number 1 pass rusher is a big deal, and to then play the man coverage that they want to play behind it. But Aiden Hutchinson done for the year. Also emotional after the game. Jared Goff gets a game ball from Dan Campbell. Goff then says, nope, this one's for you. Like, you're our rock, and you're going to continue to be our rock all season long. Really, really cool moment in the post-game locker room for Detroit. But big win, huge loss. Lions, clearly one of the best teams in the NFL. They're 4-1. Cowboys fall to 3-3. Last 2 games, Falcons, Panthers. Falcons 38-20 win over Carolina. Cousins, a cool 19 of 30 for 225 and a touchdown. Atlanta got their rushing game going big time in this one, though. Tyler Algier, 18 for 105. Bijan, 15 for 95. Touchdowns for each of them. Bijan had 2 of them. Andy Dalton, 221 through the air, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks for Carolina. Chuba Hubbard's a good player. He's got 18 carries for 92 in this one. It's something that Washington's definitely going to have to watch out for as they prepare for Carolina this week. But how bad do you think Brian Robinson wants to come back after seeing Atlanta rush for 198? And by the way, that's only because they didn't break 200 because Cousins had 4 carries for -5 yards. If Kirk hadn't had a -5er on the ground, Atlanta's over 200 yards rushing. So over 200 by their backs between Algier Robinson and Ray McLeod, who's kind of a hybrid wide receiver running back. For them, Drake London, 6 for 74, and the only touchdown that Cousins threw in the air. And how about Kyle Pitts coming alive? He had a 52-yarder in this one. He has not had a good season, but gets a nice reminder on tape that he's still dangerous and something that Washington's defense will have to deal with this week. Bengals, 17-7. They got a touchdown as they were running out the clock from Chase Brown. This was really a 10-7 game for most of it, which is kind of crazy because Cincinnati's offense has been absolutely sensational the last bunch of weeks, including against Washington, including against Baltimore. 2 games they lost, but on one of their poorest offensive performances of the season, they win. Wacky sport. 2-4. By the way, both their wins come away from home. Meanwhile, Daniel Jones, 22 of 41. That cannot be how they want to play. 22 of 41 for 205. Tyrone Tracy, after having a great week a couple weeks ago, is only 17 carries for 50 yards. Does have a touchdown, but averaged less than 3 a carry. Jones had 56 to be their leading rusher. Joe Burrow hits T. Higgins 7 times for 77 yards. Chase 5 times for 72 yards. And Cincinnati gets the win. Of course, tonight you got Buffalo and New York at MetLife Stadium. Bills at Jets. The 4 teams that were on a bye: Chiefs, Rams, Dolphins, Vikings. Just 2 teams next week on a bye, so a couple extra games on the schedule. That is our trip around the NFL. Anthony has our records. When he gets back, we'll have him calculate because I know that's what you guys care about the most. All that analysis, poo-poo. Did you suck at picking games or not? I don't know. Anthony will tell you when he gets back. Up next, a special guest will join us with Anthony out sick today for our pick six. 6 players that had a big impact. At least we thought they would. Some of them did. Some of them not so much on the Commanders-Ravens game. Back to the home team next here on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. Coming up 6:30, has John Allen played his final snap for the Commanders?
Ooh,
We're
spice.
going there. And that woo, of course, is Linnell Willingham. I teased the segment, Linnell, as we're going to have a special guest. And some of you are going to love it, and some of you are going to hate it. So we just lost some audience.
Well, yeah.
And some people got really excited.
Well, there we go, man. That's the beauty of the business, my brother. How are you, man? I know Mondays are normally you're swamped.
Yeah. No, I got a lot going on. But like, there's not a day that I don't. That's
I'm
all
about
right.
to say, that's just the lifestyle that you've chose, my friend. You do
I
a
have.
damn good job at it.
I'm hustling, but that's all right. That's what we got to do at this stage of our lives. We're just out here hustling. So here's what we do. On Fridays, we pick 6 players that we think are going to have a big impact on the game, and then Anthony and I review them on Mondays. But Anthony's out sick today, so we're hoping the Ant-Man's feeling better. And Linnell's coming up at 6:30 on overtime over on 106.7 The Fan. And so he's floating around. I said, hey, do you want to come in and review the Pick 6? And he was like, heck yeah. Let's do it.
Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level and build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
All right, let's get started. The first player, Anthony had the number 1 pick.
Number 1.
And he chose Zach Ertz.
Yeah.
I'd say Zach Ertz had a nice day at the office, Linnell.
I was about to say, Zach Ertz was somebody I highlighted during the pregame show that needed to step up. Ravens going into last weekend, 31st in the NFL in terms of yards allowed by opposing tight ends. Took him a little while to get going, Craig, but eventually you saw, that rapport between Zach Ertz and Jaden Daniels, continue to get better, and it's something that we saw a lot during training camp, Hoffman, but it felt like it's been hit or miss for Zach Ertz this year, but Sunday, he was brilliant.
No, he was, and Jaden was 7 of 9 over the middle of the field on Sunday. And that's something that a lot of people that, at that point, it's not even like that are critical, but it's kind of the, hey, all right, here's what I'm looking for. And some of that is the same people that pre-draft were looking for very specific things that maybe he didn't do a ton, and it's like the way they see the quarterback position. But it's people I respect a lot. It's Nate Tice, it's Derek Klassen, like guys that really study this and see what the best guys in the league do. But Jaden did it, and Zach Ertz is his outlet to do that. So as he continues to grow as a quarterback and his ability to attack different areas of the field becomes expanded as a thrower, that is something that where Zach Ertz plays a huge role, and I think he did a good job of that. The one thing I'm interested in moving forward is can they get Sinnott involved in the pass game?
I'm waiting, Craig.
And frankly, Bates a little bit too, but Bates is more of I won't say like a gadget, but like he's going to be out there for play action stuff. You mostly want him blocking because he's great at it. Yeah. He can run routes if you need him to. But Sinnott is a guy that I think can be a weapon long term. How quickly until he can develop some of that short term. He's doing a good job blocking, but he hasn't been involved. Does he have a catch this season?
I'm not sure, Craig.
I don't know that he has one.
I honestly, I'm not sure. I know he's been open on a couple of different occasions, but I agree with you. Like Sinnott and John Bates, think about this for a young pup coming into a tight end room that features the best blocking tight end in football. And I'm not being biased when I say that. John Bates is a bad you-know-what. And then Zach Ertz, one of the most prolific pass catchers at the position over the past 10 years. Sinnott getting to get the best of both worlds. I want to talk about John Bates here for a little bit more, though, man. The stuff that he's doing, the move block stuff, him kicking out defensive ends. He's had to block a couple of defensive tackles on counter stuff, trap stuff. Like, he's really awesome, man. I think he's as versatile as they come. And the on-field swag for John Bates is improving each and every week. It's something that I pay attention to. So I see you, Batesy.
He's doing a great job. I mean, the funny thing is, if Bates is the best, maybe Charlie Kohler's the second best.
Right, yeah.
You know, like Bates might be the best. He also might have been the second best on the field on Sunday.
Yeah.
Charlie Kohler's really good for Baltimore as that blocking Y as well. But I do think that for Sinnott, who, by the way, does not have a catch yet on the year, like there's room for growth, which is exciting. Yeah. But for Ertz, in the meantime, part of the reason they're not using those guys more as pass catchers because Ertz is doing a great job. So his timing with Daniels is really good. The one thing I will say, sometimes when Daniels is taking on pressure, Ertz has a great feel for getting open. He doesn't always win right now because he's just not the speedy guy that he used to be. And so I do wonder if there's different ways as this offense evolves throughout the year to get maybe different guys over the middle for easy outlets against pressure. But all in all, like, Zach's doing a great job. Good job, Zach Ertz. Certainly contributed to them being close in this game on Sunday.
Number 2.
All right. Number 2, my first pick was Daron Payne.
Oof.
And the reason I chose Daron, which becomes more interesting to talk about, right, is because his versatility, I thought, held a key to getting to Lamar Jackson. Some of the different fronts they could throw, his ability to move around, play the pass, play the run from basically any spot on the defensive line. And their lack of success in doing any of that, Linnell, was a big reason why they lost. You want to yell at the corners? Like, okay, well,
that's what I'm about to say, Craig.
How many corners are covering wide receivers, especially ones as good as Zay Flowers, 25 yards on a crossing route across the field? Like, it's an impossible ask. And so the lack of pressure was a huge, huge deal. Daron doesn't register a tackle in the game. His PFF grade actually wasn't that bad. So I got to maybe watch him a little bit more as I roll through the second half tape. I've watched the first half of the All-22. But he hasn't popped as I've watched it. He didn't produce anything on the stat sheet. And now with John out, like, he's going to have to do even more moving forward.
Yeah, it's tough because even when he was in there with John, right, I think the one thing the two starters have not done a good job of, and this is specific to Daron as well, is like giving up ground on these double teams. You can't get displaced 5 yards down the field on the double team. I got to give a big shout out to Phil Mathis. He, to me, plays the double team the best out of everybody on this roster in terms of giving up ground. He's not getting moved back constantly the way the other guys are. I think Johnny Newton's played it well. But I don't know if it's because Daron is a smaller defensive tackle, why he's having an issue with that. You could ask your podcast partner, Logan.
I think
the
part
old
of it, though, is
corkscrew
like
technique
him
needs
and,
to be used.
Him and John are also the guys that get double teamed the most, though. Like,
for sure.
Those guys,
For sure.
like, if you're targeting a run, like, you're trying to get the doubles on Allen and Payne versus, like, all right, we'll take the risk that Big Phil blows it up, because if you don't double Daron, his ability to get in the backfield. Because, like, here's the crazy thing about Washington's run defense. Mm-hmm. They are top, at least going into the weekend, and they had a bunch in this game, too, so I would have to double check, but I'm pretty sure they still are. They're top 5 in stuffs in the league. They've got more tackles at or behind the line of scrimmage than all but I think it was 2 teams entering the weekend. The problem is they also are top or bottom 5, if you will, in like chunk yardage. Right. So they give it, they take it away. We've seen that even at times in drives, like some of these field goal drives where they bend but don't break. They give up a 35-yard carry, then they stuff one, and now it's 2nd and 12. Offense is behind the sticks. They play it out, 3 and out from there, and it's a field goal. So their ability to kind of make up for it has been good. Unfortunately, this game, not so much. And when they need a stop late, they can't get it. But I don't know, like the first quarter, they played really well.
They did. That's
the first half, like, really wasn't that bad. And it's a couple of key backbreakers here and there on third down. But part of that is their inability to get pressure. Look, this Baltimore offensive line has really found itself the last 4 weeks. Like, they're starting to do some really good stuff. Yeah. And you have to give credit to them. But defensively, like, they need to generate pressure more consistently. And once John went out, Dorrance, who had a couple pressures early, goes out. They needed guys like Payne to step up, and they, didn't play to a superstar level, and Lamar and company did, and we saw what happened.
Yeah, it doesn't get much easier for Washington's defensive tackles either. You got big Robert Hunt next week coming to town for Carolina.
They got a lot of money invested in that interior of the offensive line.
A little bit worried. Jonathan Brooks coming off from PUP, too. It's going to be interesting this Sunday.
Yeah, they don't have Lamar, though. And there's sometimes where Lamar just makes everybody right.
For sure.
And so that's not facing Lamar Jackson again for the rest of the season. Thumbs up.
It's a win.
Number 3,
Terry McLaurin. I was stunned, Linnell, when I looked at the stat sheet and saw that Terry only had 6 catches in this game, and like the yardage was lower than I expected. His impact on this game was massive. Yeah. And I talked about this in 1st and 10. Players, not plays. It's something that Cliff really believes in, that in key situations, all right, what player do I want to get the ball, and what do my guys do well to get that? And Romo would talk on the broadcast about, like, oh, this concept and this, watch for the slant here. And instead of the slant, they'd throw a hitch. And Terry was on the receiving end of some of those. Noah Brown. Why? Because Jaden likes throwing hitches more than he likes throwing slants. These receivers are better on the hitches than they are on slants because they do run so many go balls. And it's that binary, like, can I get on top of this guy? And if not, throttle it down and or make the corner believe that I'm going deep and then throttle it down and get open. Jaden throws with anticipation really well there. And to get Terry on certain routes, to get what actually was a slant that kind of converted into a high cross for the touchdown, that was sick.
Mm-hmm.
The other touchdown he had was absolutely filthy. I can't believe Jaden fit that one in. They're finding ways to get Terry McLaurin the football in the ways that I think Terry should have been getting the football for years. And the results, they're pretty good.
Love it. Terry can't stop smiling. One thing I appreciate about watching the TV copy over again is seeing some of the sideline shots. Like the rapport that Terry and Jaden have built is honestly really fun to watch. Like seeing those two get in each other's face, spitting all over each other. I kid when I say that. But they're getting hype. And
that's good because that would be disgusting.
Well, yeah, obviously. But no, like those two are starting to form a little bit of a brotherhood, man. And I think the trust has been there. We saw those two hook up a ton in training camp, but it was a lot of the times on the deep ball stuff. I think the touchdown, the back shoulder ball where, Jaden was able to read Terry's body language when he converts the route based off of the coverage. Like, that's just high-end stuff from both of those guys. Terry makes a tremendous catch. One thing that's slept on about our guy, Tear Bear, man, Craig, is the field awareness, right? Like, knowing when to get your knees down, knowing where you are on the field. Terry's really, really good at that. And I think as the season continues to progress, man, those two are going to be one of the best 1-2 punches in the NFL.
I still think that there's another level for Terry this year in this offense, too. Like, he's really dynamic when the ball's in his hands in a little bit of space, but he's not, like, the cleanest catcher of the football. So some of these screens, like, Cliff realizes I have to get the ball to Terry and try to let him run with it. Yeah. Because if I can get him going, then that is good and that is dangerous. He's hard to tackle and he's hard to bring down. So the default for that for receivers is, well, let's throw him screens. Those are so timing dependent that when he bobbles it a little bit, it kind of messes up the timing. Yeah. And eventually they're going to find the screen, the thing, whether it's a shallow with some blockers out in front, like they'll find a way to do it. And if they can hit that a couple times this year, like we're talking about potential monster gains. So I still think there's a lot of really interesting things that Cliff, I'm sure, will figure out because Cliff has been a master of figuring things out so far this year. All right. Perhaps the two biggest areas of concern in the game, the secondary and the offensive line. We will talk about both as we wrap up our Pick 6 next. But first, let's get an update on the latest in the world of women's sports, presented by Wawa. Gotta have a Wawa. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Picking up with our Pick 6 at 6. Linnell Willingham with us here in studio. Again, after he gets done with us, he's going to walk down the hall, and he will pick up on overtime on 106.7 The Fan. If you want the locked-in version of Linnell, listen for the next 10 minutes. If you want the unhinged version, wait till he's unleashed on the Fan.
That's amazing.
Is it wrong?
I would say it's about 89% correct.
Yeah. I feel like I am the only...
Sax the guy behind the glass today, Metal Chris. I mean, he is my normal...
Overtime producer?
My normal, what do we call it?
Metal Chris, how surprised are you at how tame Linnell has been during the first part of our Pick 6? Oh, we got to figure out which mic.
Especially coming after a loss. Like,
yeah.
Usually after a loss, Linnell is a little off his rocker, and this is probably the most calm I've seen him on a Misery Monday.
It's so funny because, like, our schedules are just crazy, and you're doing a lot more stuff with Russell this year, and you guys, I don't know if that's good for either of your health, but, like, last year when you were with me, like, you'd kind of have, I feel like I'm the only person in this entire building who has some sort of guardrails on you. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that says about you. I don't know what that says about me. But everywhere else, like sometimes I tune in and I'm like, is that the same dude?
It's not. You probably have the understanding of my mental health a little bit better than everybody else, is what I would say. Oh. You know the right things to say, and you know how to just listen to me sometimes. Yeah. That's what you do a good job of. You're a good listener, correct?
Thank you, Linnell.
And you respect my football smarts. That's what I love.
Yeah, sometimes you have them. You apply them in some wild-ass ways sometimes, but for the most part, like, you do the work. I will always say that about you. You are very good at doing research. Coming to the correct conclusions, sometimes we have differing opinions. But the research-wise, we're there. All right, let's pick up with our Pick 6. 6 players we picked on Friday we thought would have a big impact on the game. This is actually one of the most interesting ones. I'm glad that he made the list.
Number 4.
Number 4 is Quan Martin, and I'm actually going to go ahead and hit
number 5
as well because Jeremy Chin. I reordered here so we could talk about the safeties together. I thought Quan had a very interesting game, at least through the first half when I've watched the tape. I need to obviously watch the second half, and we'll talk more about this tomorrow. Logan and I will talk about it and take command, and then we'll bring even more here to the radio. But there's a couple of plays where I feel like Quan gets turned around, where Quan gets a little lost. There's also a couple of plays where Quan turns what, against I think a lot of other teams, would be 15, 20-yard gains into like 7-yard gains because he is so aggressive and such a sure tackler around the line of scrimmage or on some of these short routes where he comes up out of his safety position. So it's one of those things where you see the potential of just how good he can be. And, like, is this a guy that's a future Pro Bowl level player potentially, but also you see the youth and the inexperience. And I'm going to call it youth and inexperience as opposed to inconsistency because it is his first time playing safety in the NFL full time. And there's even a play where, like, he's in the box and he comes up and stuffs a run. And I'm like, dang, they should play him in the box more. And then you remember that's what he did last year. Like, he was drafted as a nickel and played a lot of that Buffalo big nickel. And so I'm curious how they continue to rotate he and Chin together because Chin obviously, I think, again, showed his value in the box at times. Like, some of the runs that get out I don't think are on him, but, like, he will go Chin a guard and someone else misses a play. Yeah. And so his ability to do that at the safety position, I think, does give this defense a little bit higher ceiling, specifically against the run. They got to get some of the front stuff figured out. But I think at the safety position, like, there's a type that Dan Quinn likes, and these two fit the type.
Yeah, and Joe Witt even talked about it close to a month ago, just about Quan Martin in particular, the play style, arriving violently, and him, really wearing that on the chin. No pun intended, Jeremy Chin does that really well as well. We've seen him. I love what you talked about, him coming up and just blowing up a guard. And
he's not afraid in the box.
He's not, and I think and I wanted to ask, Dan this during the week, man, like, how do you get to the conclusion of playing starters on special teams? Because we talked to Jeremy about it last week. Him coming down and making the tackle on special teams juices up this defense, especially when it's a big hit. He takes pride in it. He looks at it almost like the first defensive play, he told us. So I
you
think
can tell,
awesome.
like, first 2 kickoffs to this game, that was actually in my notes. Like, he had the first 2 special teams tackles. Like, and especially, that's hard to do when Jeremy Reeves and Nick Ballora and guys who live on special teams are trying to make trying to make those tackles because those dudes are flying to the ball and Chin's beating them. And I think the sure-handedness of them, like obviously earlier in the year there were some missed tackles. There were a couple in this game here and there, but those dudes are pretty sure-handed, and I think it's done well. The obvious issue becomes in coverage. Like, how do you cover more space? And I think Percy Butler sometimes gets asked to cover a lot of ground.
You know how fast he is. That's
and I get it, but they play like one of the ones that I'd be curious about, and I'm sure I can probably have someone who's on the beat ask this for me. I want to know what the coverage was on the Mark Andrews touchdown because
he looked like.
Well, the thing is, like, there's 3 options there, and I hope I can explain this well enough on the radio that it makes sense without a visual. But it's one of 2 coverages. It's either cover 2, so 2 deep safeties, or quarter half, aka cover 6. So it's quarters on one side, and then half. Percy Butler plays it like it's cover 2 on the other, and either Butler, if it's 2, Butler, there's no one on his side of the field. He's got to close. There's too much happening on Quan's side of the field, and if Butler closes, then you're fine. If it's quarter half, then Quan is actually the guy who vacates the space where Andrews goes, and he chases a corner route. But I can't tell if Sainer still is playing with really great depth as a deep player or as an underneath player, and thus it's cover 2, or if he's actually supposed to be a deep player. Either way, it's like a good job by Mikey. And if Quan realizes that and realizes, like, I don't need to be as quick to this because Sainer still is doing a good job of, kind of cutting down the angle of the throw, he might be able to undercut that throw to Andrews and pick it off on the backside. The third option is Bobby Wagner carries the seam, but I don't know what the rules are. It depends on whether it was like a pure cover 2, a Tampa 2, et cetera, et cetera. But it shows you why, without knowing the play call, it's really, really hard.
Yes.
But those kinds of things, whether the call is perfect or whether you just communicate it post-snap and, Bobby's pointing and is it that Butler's cue to get over there a little bit faster, or, is Butler saying like quad, backside, whatever it is, like those kinds of coverage things and the lack of pure speed that they have to cover for some of their mistakes if they get a step off, I think is one of the vulnerabilities of this defense, and you saw it on a couple of key spots on Sunday, specifically at that safety position.
Yeah, I agree. The communication, it feels like it's improved here over the past couple of weeks.
It's definitely way better.
Exactly. I think Joe's talked about how he's tried to simplify things for guys. And the one thing I love about Joe Witt when he takes the podium, man, it's a lot of me. I didn't coach it well enough. I think the players appreciate that. And I think when they're in the film room, it allows him to be a lot more transparent and honest with these dudes, too.
Yeah, because I think there's sometimes that he gets to the podium, he's like, that guy needs to play better. But there's also times he's like, that one's on me. Like, that was a bad call. Good. They got me.
Yeah.
And there's a couple times I think in this game where Joe's going to be like, they got me. Like, that's a bad job by me. I didn't put our guys in a great position. There's also sometimes, hey, that might have been a good position, then Lamar made it a bad one. His checks at the line were great.
Yes.
So a lot of really good stuff there. All right, last but not least,
Number 6.
Tyler Biadasz, who I kind of picked as a representative for, getting the protections right, getting the runs targeted, and ultimately executing up front. And obviously, Baltimore does a great job with some of their blitzes. Kyle Hamilton's excellent. So there's a couple times where they get Washington with the pen. Jaden does a good job of saying, get the ball out quick. There's a couple times, obviously, he gets sacked. And then the biggest thing, though, is the run game. I don't think it was as much a targeting issue. We'll talk through it tomorrow when Logan and I get on Take Command, and that's his area of super expertise. But, like, Baltimore just kicks ass up front. Like, those dudes are so good. And they're the best run defense, I think, in the NFL. And so how mad can I get without your number one running back of being able to do it? But Washington's inability to find a run game definitely hurt them offensively.
And it was interesting, right? Because it felt like early on that first Eckler run, I think the jet motion influences the linebacker and it gets him to flow a little bit over to that side. And then Biadasz is able to easily seal him off because he's already kind of leaned one way. I think, like, to me, Allegretti talked about it post-game. Like, sometimes dudes are just big, fast, and physical and tough to move. I think Baltimore's defensive front fits right into that category. But, like, I don't know. The play calling it's easy to go back and do it after the fact, right, and play Monday morning quarterback. But, like, the play calling, it felt like it was interesting, right? Jeremy McNichols had 2 runs in this game. One goes for 5 yards, one goes for 4 yards. Keep giving it to him, right?
Yeah, I definitely wish McNichols got a little bit more run. But I also understand that they felt like they were running into a brick wall, and Jaden was, like, doing all right. So it's like, let's do the thing we're doing all right at. I think the other thing, too, though, is, like, Logan talked about this, and I didn't fully appreciate his point until I went back and watched the tape. of the first half offense. But he talked about how at the end of the game, like things got a little stale and stagnant as they were trying that final drive, and they're just having to grind it out, and they score, but it takes a little longer, in part because they got nothing left in the clip. Like
he's called everything,
dude. Cliff called a flea flicker screen. They had this like multi-layer, like fake wide receiver, throw it to the back after a jet motion. Like some of the stuff Cliff throws out there is some of the most creative stuff you will see Sunday after Sunday. Like it seems like he has an endless bag, and they finally found the end of his bag for at least this week.
Yes.
He'll fill back up. They'll be fine over the next couple of weeks. And I don't even know if they need that to beat Carolina, but they got to the end of this, and like they tried everything, but some of that stuff you can only really run once because it's pretty high risk, and I think that's what happened. All right, you have to go because your show starts in 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh! Well, knowing how Grant and Danny go to break, I won't be on for another 10 minutes. So
okay, well you have 10 minutes to mosey across the hallway.
For sure.
Linnell Willingham, everybody, I really appreciate you doing
yes, sir.
this, bro.
Appreciate you having me, man.
Pick 6, that is it. We will do it again on Friday. Pick 6 new players, and of course the Pick 6 weekday edition you will hear from Dan Quinn and Jaden Daniels on Wednesday, and Cliff Kingsbury and Joe Jr. on Thursday. When we get back, has John Allen played his final snap as a Commander? 301-230-0980. We take your calls on a Tell the Truth Monday on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Taking your calls at 301-230-0980. That's 301-230-0980 on this Tell the Truth Monday. And we're going to get into it. It feels sports talk radio-y, but it also, we're a sports talk radio show, as much as sometimes I'm like, man, we are a very silly industry that does very silly stuff. But two, it is, I think, a relevant question with the breaking news earlier today. John Allen tore his pec. It absolutely sucks. I feel terrible for John. He has been through a lot. I think there have been times where he is just, the frustration has boiled over, and maybe you look back and you're like, man, I wish I'd handled that a little bit differently, a little bit better. But I think by and large, man, he's just been a human being through it all. Like, I do not fault him for being incredibly frustrated and thinking about potentially wanting to get out of here and not wanting to go through a rebuild, considering his experience in the NFL. Like, if you can go somewhere else and get a bunch of money, why wouldn't you? But he ultimately had a conversation with Adam Peters, realized, like, oh, this dude's the real deal, and he decided he wanted to stay. And so they get on the same page for this year. I think it took him a couple weeks to really understand what they wanted him to do. There was some technique stuff that they wanted, but he was bought in. He just hadn't played up to the level yet. And in the last couple weeks, he started to really play up to that level. He starts to flash a little bit more on tape. He starts to then have some of the production to match what you're seeing on tape in terms of the effort and the intensity. And you're like, oh, that's better. Okay, bam. I think he had 5 tackles a couple weeks ago. Like, there was an uptick in his play, and there's some stuff yesterday that's up and down. He's facing that really good Baltimore offensive line, but he had a couple tackles, and there's a couple plays on tape where you're like, dang, that is really good. Like John Allen making special plays in that first half, and then it's all over. And I feel terrible for the hometown guy who looked like he was finally settling in and was going to make a legitimate case to stay here and maybe be able to retire a Commander, and now we have to ask the question, has John Allen played his last snap in Washington? I'm curious what you guys think, / what you guys want at 301-230-0980. I think my answer is a bit of an it depends. Because I think there's the obvious fact that Johnny Newton is drafted at the same position with a pretty freaking high draft pick. He's basically a late first rounder drafted in the 30s. And they had a first-round grade on him, and he is on a rookie contract for the next 3 years. John Allen, if you want to keep him next year, costs you basically $17 million. You have to pay. There's $6 million against the cap, no matter what. Proration of his signing bonus from the extension he signed whatever number of years ago, and then a $17 million base salary that you can waive and move on from at no extra penalty. So you can save $17 million against the cap by moving on. You could trade him, help him find a home, and then he probably signs an extension somewhere else. You can just let him loose and let him go to free agency if you would prefer that. Obviously, if you can get something in return, that would be helpful, even if it's a conditional pick. But you get control over a little bit, and I do think that is a potential, right? If you go into February and you guys agree, hey, we're gonna try to find a trade partner for you. We're gonna make sure we send you somewhere you like. But if not, we're gonna move on. So there's no chance you're playing here. Then John probably goes like, okay, well, let me know, or we'll go see if we can find a trade, and then that's that. And a team that works out a trade guarantees that they get the player. It also takes off the table, frankly, trading him at the deadline this year. What if another team was like, hey, we'll offer you something you really want, whether it's a D-line for D-line, edge for D-tackle, whether it's a corner, whether it's a wide receiver, whether it's whatever, even draft picks. I mean, shoot, Adam Peters, I'm sure, wants more of those. If you thought you could get on without John, like, that's off the table at the trade deadline. So now he's just going to go on IR, and at the end of the season, you figure out what you want to do. I do think, though, there's a chance he comes back. Like, he represents so much of what they want. If they can find a price that works, you have a ton of flexibility. And maybe it's a 1-year extension. You run it back next year, see what happens. Give him the chance to play one more year in D.C., and if things go really well and you're winning, maybe he wants to come back again. And depending on his level of play will determine his ultimate salary. But John Allen's still, I think, a well-respected, good football player. But when you need defensive end, when you need corner, expensive positions, you're going to obviously address some of that in the draft next year. but can you find someone in free agency to give a bunch of money to in an offseason where you're going to have as much or more cap space than every other team in the league? And so realistically, if you have Duran for at least next year, if you have Newton ready to be a star for you, you need to spend your resources somewhere else. Like, that's just responsible team management. And so I think, like, in a really cutthroat, cold business kind of way, my answer to has John Allen played his final snap in burgundy and gold is probably yes, but it's not really that much of a reflection of John Allen. It's just what the chart says, if you will. It's, hey, you were the guy that signed first. In this chronology, the year over year of our rebuild, we can move on from you and save $17 million. And I guess what I mean by this more specifically is if Duran and John's contracts were switched, injury or not, I'd say the same thing about Duran Payne. It's not really about specifically, oh, John Allen is not good or not worthy of keeping around. It's this roster was poorly built by the previous administration, and based off their chronology and where they've spent resources in their first year in charge, they being Adam Peters, Lance Newmark, and his crew, the right thing to do is to move on. I wish nothing but the best for John. I hope that he still comes on the Junkies here on the Team 980 every single morning or every Tuesday at 9 o'clock and gives his take on the team, because I think he is wired correctly. I think he's got a great mindset. I know people have questioned it, but I just, it's not what I see when I watch the guy. It's not what I see when I listen to the guy. I remember covering him as a rookie and coming out of, I remember going on the Junkies when I was the beat reporter for The Fan after his rookie season, and the way he took accountability coming out of Alabama, that Nick Saban way. And I said, I don't care what they do going into next year at a bunch of stuff, but if there's not a C on John Allen's chest, then they did it wrong. And he's been that captain. He's still the guy at the center of the huddle before they go out. And for that to still be the case with some of the other voices, I think finally he's got more support. I think finally he's not having to burden that leadership along with Terry basically alone, which is how it should be. But this is the first time that John really hasn't had to be that. Like Ziggy Hood, his rookie year, was a guy that was wired the right way and taught John, I think, a lot. But John and Terry have never had guys they could look up to. And this is the first time. And so for the season to end for John like this, I hate it for him. But if I'm going to answer the question realistically, based off where the contracts go and purely the logistics of all this, I think John Allen probably has played his last snap in burgundy and gold. We'll see. I would love for them to come to a deal that works for everybody and him to retire here, because what a cool story. The kid from Stonebridge going to practice in Ashburn, to play in Landover, and if he got to play his entire career in burgundy and gold, like, that'd be great. But rarely is that how it goes in the NFL. It stands for not for long, and sometimes that can be your whole career or just your stint with the team, even if things look like they were turning a corner as recently as last week for John and how he was playing this season. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, we will shut it down for the day with real things real people said in real microphones. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube too at the Team 980. Coming up tomorrow on the show. Let's see. What do we got tomorrow on the show? It's Tuesday. So that means it's Tischler Tuesday. Mitchell will join us coming up at 5 o'clock. We will also have our vibe check to start the show. And I said this earlier in the show, but I've never hosted a radio show where, and Meadow Chris, how long have you been doing some sports radio stuff? Also, do you and your beautiful beard want to be on camera, or you just want to be a voiceless man in the background?
I don't mind being voiceless. It's fine.
Or faceless.
Yeah,
okay,
it's fine.
Everyone can imagine a big, beautiful beard to match this man's voice. But I'm not going to make anybody be on the YouTube stream that doesn't want to be. How long have you been doing sports radio now? You do a lot of music radio and a lot of cool stuff throughout your career, but you've been doing sports radio for now.
I've listened to sports radio for decades, but I didn't start doing much of it until I started working here a little over a year ago.
Right. So in your whole life of listening to sports talk radio.
Yeah.
How many shows after a loss have you ever listened to where people are calling in apologizing to the general manager for what they thought of him in the offseason?
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever heard anything like that. Like there's some weird one. Like I remember after the body bag game and things like that, where it's just like, everyone's just mad because it's more like, well, we shouldn't have lost and the other team was playing dirty kind of stuff. But this is different, I don't know.
Yeah, it's I've never had that one before. I expected people to be far angrier today. Maybe tomorrow, vibe check. But typically vibe check, like Mondays are when, and for whatever reason, I don't know.
I think it's the record. Their record gets closer to 500. People start getting a little more feisty.
Definitely. But also, I think there's actually seems to be a respect for how good Baltimore is.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, we went and competed. We didn't get blown out. Some of that was frustrating, but we didn't get blown out.
Yeah.
So that's
I think
cool.
There's something to say about this team. This is kind of their first real test, I feel, this season, The other teams I think they've played I don't think any of them are over 500 that we beat, right? So, at least not at the time. And so I think, seeing a team that was in the AFC Championship last year, went toe-to-toe with Kansas City in the championship. I mean, so there's obviously players have changed and whatever, but it's still Lamar back there, and they've added Derrick Henry.
Well, it's also, I think that's like, hey, our guy went toe-to-toe with Lamar. Like, Lamar scored a little bit more, but we know he's got better dudes, and now we got our dude.
Yeah.
And he can do it. This is cool.
Yeah, I feel the team, despite this loss, I think everyone kind of knows we're still on the upswing. We have not hit our ceiling yet, despite this loss. We're still seeing how far we can go. So
yeah, no, it's exciting. So tomorrow, Vibe Check Tuesday. We'll take your calls for the entire first hour. I know we're working on a couple other guest things. Let's see what else tomorrow. We do our NFL tier rankings tomorrow. So we did say, so what we do instead of power rankings is we do groups. There's 4 groups. And we said if the Commanders compete with the Ravens, that if they legitimately go toe-to-toe with them, then we would have to consider, win or loss, putting them in the top tier.
So what is the top? Is the S tier the top tier?
Oh, we call them prime contenders.
Okay.
With the criteria being, we would not be surprised to see that team in the Super Bowl.
I don't know. It's hard to say that. I mean, I love the Commanders. Don't get me wrong. It's just as hard to say they're that far yet.
I've actually been kind of dreading the segment tomorrow because I don't. They competed, but I'm still man, they're definitely below. I don't know that I put them in the same tier as the Ravens. So we're gonna have to battle that out tomorrow.
I think it's hard to put them in the same tier right there.
But it's hey, if they kept improving, could they go? I don't think the Ravens beat them 10 out of 10 times.
No, and I think there's a lot of ways that if they played, say they were in the same division, we played them again at home, kind of thing.
Yeah,
that game goes another way, possibly.
So we gotta make that decision tomorrow. So that's coming up at 6 tomorrow. I feel like I'm missing something else that we always do on Tuesdays. I only do this show every week. It's only my name on it. But I think what we've learned today is when Anthony's not here, I become a little disorganized. Someone's got to keep us on track. That's why we have a spreadsheet. I just don't have the spreadsheet open right now.
You'll probably be talking about tonight's Monday night game, I would assume, right?
What's tonight's game?
Bills Jets.
Maybe. I hate that game. I don't want to watch that game.
It's two quarterbacks that really have something to prove this week. I'll tell you that.
No, I'm not saying it's not an interesting
that,
game.
I think, is a
I
nice
personally
matchup, so.
don't have a lot of investment in wanting to watch it.
No, I'm not part of the Bills Nation, but I'm fascinated by Aaron Rodgers on the Jets. I'm not a huge Aaron Rodgers fan, but I am fascinated by his tenure there for some reason. It's just, I don't know. It's so.
Do you
weird.
think anybody hates the Jets more than Jets fans hate the Jets?
I don't know, man.
Being a fan of that team, like, you've been so bad for so long, then it's like, we got Rodgers. There goes his Achilles. Now he's back, and they're the most frustrating team in the entire sport. I have no idea what to do with them when we in our pick segment every single week.
That last game they played, was it Europe, London or whatever they played last one? And at the end of that game where he threw that touch or that interception with like 47 seconds left or whatever, and I was like, well, he can't blame anyone else for that. I mean, that was clearly Aaron Rodgers that caused that. And then 2 days later, there goes the coach, and you're like, he's the defensive coach. What just happened here? Like,
and I don't know how they're going to respond to that. I could see them being like, we want to play for Robert. And the defense playing really well. And I could also see them having, like, absolutely no fire. I think Ulbricht's really well respected, the interim. So that's going to be really interesting tonight. So maybe we will talk about that tomorrow. Also, we'll see if Anthony's antibodies work and see if he's back. If not, you might be here tomorrow to do all this with me.
that is untrue. I'm going on vacation tomorrow. So
Metal Chris will not be here tomorrow. Where are you going on vacation?
Go to New York City.
Okay.
So
nice.
Going up. The New York Comic Con is starting this week, so I'll be up there for the con through Sunday. So
nice. We'll enjoy that. All right. Last but not least, we don't have a lot today for Real Things because I didn't have a chance to peruse the internet for all kinds of wackiness. I was too busy watching film, and there's no sound on film, so that didn't really do me any good. But there is a pretty funny moment from ESPN's pregame show, and thus...
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11, not very good.
Set into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, Monday Night Countdown rolling on, NFL Live rolling a little bit earlier on ESPN. They are in New York for this one at MetLife Stadium. Notably windy there for Mina Kimes and Dan Orlovsky.
He is making more special passes than any quarterback in the NFL this year.
I'm going to tell you what you don't understand the difficulty of. Bro, Mina talking with all her hair in her face.
Mina's
wind is blowing.
The wind is like blitzing Mina in the face, and she says, I don't care. I'm going to keep talking to the ball.
Here, like in one of those stores.
That's insane.
Never been under that much pressure.
By the way, earlier Mina was watching C.J. Stroud film and yelling at us about all the great passes. So absolutely true over there.
Hey, she's a trooper. There's a lot of hair on Mina Kimes' face in this clip. This is why you need a haircut. I need a haircut. I can't be having any of that. But I'll take care of that later this week. All right, that's our show. Metal Chris, appreciate you filling in. Hopefully Ann will be back and feeling better tomorrow. Either way, I'll see you then. Thanks for